Okay, I see that it is 7:30, so I'll call this meeting of the Arlington Heights Village Board to order on Monday, November 6, 2023, and ask if you would all please rise and join the village board in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Dunnington?
Here.
Trustee Schwingbeck?
Here.
Trustee Bertucci?
Here.
Trustee Tinaglia?
Here.
Trustee Grasse?
Here.
Trustee LaBedz?
Here.
Trustee Shirley?
Here.
Trustee Baldino?
Here.
And President Hayes.
Here. First item on the agenda is the approval of minutes, and we have two sets to approve tonight. The first is from our committee of the whole meeting of October 10, 2023. Any changes or passes?
I'll pass.
Passed by trustee Bertucci. Any other changes or passes? Seeing none.
Approval.
Second.
Motion to approve by trustee Tinaglia, seconded by trustee LaBedz. Any further questions or comments from the board or from the audience? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And next we have the minutes from our village board meeting of October 16, 2023. Any changes or passes?
Pass.
Passed by trustee Tinaglia, passed by trustee Shirley, and passed by trustee Dunnington. So
I move to approve the village board minutes for October 16th, 2023.
Second.
motion by trustee Grasse, seconded by trustee Bertucci. Right? Or who was it? Trustee Schwingbeck. Okay. Any further questions or comments from the board? Anything from the audience? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And next we move on to the approval of the accounts payable, and I'd call in trustee Bertucci.
Move approval of the warrant register for the check date 10/30/2023 in the amount of $3,318,604.08.
Second.
Motion by trustee Bertucci, seconded by trustee Baldino. Any questions or comments from the board? Anything from the audience? If not, roll call.
Trustee Bertucci?
Yes.
Trustee Baldino?
Yes.
Trustee LaBedz?
Yes.
Trustee Grasse?
Yes.
Trustee Shirley?
Yes.
Trustee Schwingbeck?
Yes.
Trustee Dunnington?
Yes.
Trustee Tinaglia?
Yes.
President Hayes.
Yes. All right, we will then move on to citizens to be heard. And it does not appear I have any blue cards on items not on the agenda. So is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address the board on items not on the agenda? All right, seeing none.
Here.
I say, come forward if you would. Just give us your name, please.
Of course, yeah. Sorry, I got here late. My name is Mark Sporsich. I reside at 415 North Haddow Avenue.
Right,
We
Mark.
were
And
here,
I think you know the drill. It's just 3-minute time limit if you would.
That's all I need.
Right.
I just want to speak to the board and let them know that, my wife has been working with Hart on making progress towards getting some solution towards this house. I've gone from Charles to Randy, now working with Hart on this, trying to get help. I appreciate the opportunity to get to talk to you. I understand you were told not to talk to us, unfortunately, but we would like to work with you on a solution.
Okay, well, I know the staff is working hard on it, and so we'll continue to do that.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Skorsich. All right, are there any other members of the audience who wish to address the board on items not on the agenda? All right, seeing none then, I'll close the citizens to be heard portion and move on then to old business. And we do have one item to report out this evening, and that motion was made by trustee Grasse.
Thank you, Mayor Harris. I move now, as I did earlier this evening, to concur in the mayor's appointment of Joseph Novak, Psych D, for appointment to the Board of Health, term ending April 30th, 2026.
Second.
Motion by trustee Grasse, seconded by trustee Schwingbeck. Any questions or comments from the board? Anything from the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Joe, if you come forward, if you would. And we'll make it official. And would you just raise your right hand and repeat after me? I, and state your full name,
I, Joseph J. Novak,
having been appointed to the Board of Health
having been appointed to the Board of Health
in the Village of Arlington Heights,
in the Village of Arlington Heights,
in the County of Cook,
in the County of Cook,
do solemnly swear and affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office according to the best of my ability.
of the office to the best of my abilities.
Congratulations, we know you will. Come forward if you would. I would like to present you with a village logo pin to wear proudly as a representative of this board and this community. And also, if I could have you sign your oath of office with our village clerk. And then you'll be official. Congratulations, Joe.
Thank you. Congratulations.
If there is no other old business to report out, then we will move on to the consent agenda. And I do have one, well, first, is there any members of the board who wish to remove an item on the consent agenda? Seeing none, I do have a request from Keith Moons to remove consent legal A. That's the ordinance correction on the inclusionary housing ordinance. And so that shall be removed. Any other request for removal from the consent agenda by the audience? Seeing none, I will come back to the board then. Are there any members of the board who wish to vote no or pass on any remaining items on the consent agenda? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the remaining items.
I'll move approval of the consent agenda, the remaining items.
Second.
Motion by trustee LaBedz. Who was the second?
I think it was.
Second.
Nicolle.
We'll give it to trustee Grasse. Roll call.
Trustee LaBedz?
Yes.
Trustee Grasse?
Yes.
Trustee Schwingbeck?
Yes.
Trustee Baldino?
Yes.
Trustee Bertucci?
Yes.
Trustee Dunnington?
Yes.
Trustee Shirley?
Yes.
Trustee Tinaglia?
Yes.
President Hayes?
Yes. We'll move on then to new business, and we do have one item on the new business item agenda, and that's the request for plan unit development and land use variation for the multifamily development in the B5 district, and a conceptual restaurant special use permit and associated variations. So is the petitioner present?
Yes, we are.
If you'd come forward and just identify yourself.
Thank you. Mayor, members of the Board of Trustees, my name is Bernard Citron, the law firm of Thompson Coburn. I'm here representing Joe Taylor, who's here, who's the principal. In this regard, we do have our full team here. So unless there's questions, we'll just proceed with a
Yeah, why don't you
short-
proceed with your presentation, and then we'll go from there.
One thing I just wanted to point out that this has been a long process. We will take some of the blame for that, but we did entirely redesign the building from the first time this went through. We think to good effect, because all three agencies or all three commissions did ultimately approve this unanimously. So with that, Katie can walk you through what it was and where we are now. And then if you have any questions, we do have our engineer and we have our traffic consultant here too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. I'm Katie Lambert. I'm the design director and a partner at OKW Architects, and have been really excited to be the design lead on this project with the rest of the team. So briefly walking through the site, I know everybody is very familiar at this point. We are in this red rectangle at Eastman and Highland, just north of where we are today, and still part of the B5 downtown district. We've included some photos showing what's there today, and again, are really excited to bring a more vibrant use to this property than what you see right now. So as Bernie alluded to, this slide really starts to show the difference from where we began to where we are today. So up on top, we have a couple of renderings that show the proposed project as presented to Plan Commission in May of this year. The bottom images show the proposed project as presented last month to Plan Commission. And so basically, we have gone from a modern, taller building that was closer to St. James to a squatter building further from St. James with a full level of parking below grade. And this slide really kind of points out, I think, the collaborative compromises that were made along the way. So essentially, after that initial plan commission in May, we really, regrouped based on the feedback we got from the commission, regrouped with the neighborhood association, had actually a collaborative meeting at the library to talk about some of the changes that our team was interested in looking at, and really, I think got some good feedback and buy-in on the general strategy for the plan. So what we looked at is a reduction in unit count to where we are today at 136 units. We reduced the building by 1 story of height, and basically partially submerged the parking garage so that today we have 1 level of parking fully below grade, 1 level at grade. We're now looking at a 10-foot setback along St. James on the north at level 1. And essentially, this section on the right serves to show how the building steps back even further from that 10 feet as you begin to go up in height. And so by the time you get to the top floor of the building, level 6, you're looking at a 50-foot setback. One of the other changes, we are now proposing a building that is mostly brick based on some of the feedback that we had gotten to the more modern panelized materials on the initial proposal. And then also, in terms of the site access, we are now proposing ingress to the parking would be on Eastman, egress would be southbound only on Highland. So here's the site plan as it sits today. Again, Eastman is basically where we're looking at for the primary point of access for the parking. Along the north on St. James, you can begin to see the various setbacks at different levels of height. So again, in summary, we're proposing 136 units, 2 levels of enclosed parking, which would be really serving the residential units, 5 levels of units and amenities up above, total of 184 parking spaces, and about more or less 2,000 square feet of commercial space, primarily restaurant use. And so this first floor plan really shows how all of that would lay out in the building. So over on the right side of the page near Eastman, in blue, you can see really that residential entrance from Eastman, and it's directly adjacent to that yellow space, which would be that commercial restaurant. So part of the premise of the project is that these are going to be a multifamily building that's going to have a highly hospitality-oriented feel. So similar how you would walk into a hotel and there might be an adjacent restaurant, and the lobby might be a little bit bigger and something that you would be excited to occupy, this building's really going to function just like that. But from a functional standpoint, in terms of what folks from downtown Arlington Heights will see, is a really activated ground floor plan along Eastman that actually serves to conceal the parking behind it. Behind it, you can really see, again, that enclosed parking garage along with open parking spaces along Highland. The parking on Highland is going to serve the commercial restaurant uses and also will function as guest parking overnight. The egress onto Highland from the parking garage is something we've been working back and forth with staff on. So I think we had mentioned that really the intent is to be southbound only. We've kind of studied a couple of different configurations. I think with staff and engineering, everybody has agreed that the basically the configuration shown on this screen, which is a 90-degree exit only, makes the most sense, but there will be a lot of signage encouraging everybody to turn left only and not into the neighborhood. Basement parking. So this is basically on that second level where you would have the resident amenity deck facing onto Highland. And so we're proposing that there would be a pool accessed by the residents along with some other clubroom and residential amenity spaces. And then a typical levels of units up above, stepping back at that 6th floor along the north side to, again, just give a little bit more relief from St. James and from the houses to the north. So this is an aerial view that starts to show how the design of the building would fit into the rest of the downtown Arlington Heights context. Makes a lot of sense really in this B5 zoning. Just, quick note, we are, well below the 90-foot threshold. We're at 76 feet in height. We're sitting within all of the setback requirements and below the density threshold for B5 as well. In terms of the design of the building as it stands today, we're proposing basically a combination of brick on the primary exterior facades. Within the courtyard and at that upper 6th level in dark gray, you can see a little bit of stucco accents. But, I think in terms of developing the design, we're showing kind of a crisp articulation, but trying to incorporate a lot of detailing throughout the brick. And this is a view from the north, again, from kind of the residence on St. James, looking back at the building. So again, that first floor is really fully enclosed parking. You won't see any bleed of headlights or lights inside the garage because we're proposing that it would be totally enclosed, mechanically ventilated. And there's some of the detail of metalwork that we're proposing on the outside of the garage. And then this entry view really, is kind of the heart of the project. Again, we talked about the importance of the commercial space in activating the street presence of this building and how it's going to really, start to bring the vitality of downtown Arlington Heights a little bit further north. And we think that really the dynamic quality of the entrance as well as the dramatic amount of glass of the restaurant is going to help to do that. We've included building elevations. Landscaping plan. And again, I think as part of this redesign, we've paid quite a bit of attention to the 10-foot setback on St. James to try to really, include some more dramatic landscaping than you might typically see in a commercial district. Nope, you don't want to talk parking? All right.
A couple of things real briefly. One, if you would like to hear from our traffic consultant, he can walk through this. We've been working with staff in terms of number of parking spaces and how that's all going to function. So I'll leave that up to the...
Yeah, why don't you walk through that if you would?
Oh, well, in that case, Steve, you're up.
Good evening, Steve Corcoran with Erickson Engineering. I prepared the traffic and parking study for this project. First, in terms of traffic, we looked at the apartments. Again, in a downtown area, it doesn't generate the traffic like a standalone apartment building out in the suburbs. And we also compared it to the prior use of 2 office buildings. And in the morning, we generate less traffic than what was previously done by those office buildings, as well as we generate a little bit more in the afternoon rush hour, but that's because of the restaurant, if that commercial space becomes a restaurant. But we're still talking about a car a minute in terms of trip generation under either scenario. And we looked at the capacity analysis of the street network, and that worked very well. We looked at parking. There's a number of tables. I'm not going to go through all of them, but first of all, we actually meet zoning code. So we're not asking for a variance from zoning code parking requirements. We also looked at the census data of auto ownership. Oh, is that it? Of the auto ownership within the village. And then we also looked at a number of apartment complexes in downtown suburban areas, as well as within Arlington Heights, and determined, parking demand. And one of the things we found, this development's a little different than some of the other ones in downtown Arlington Heights that we reviewed. In terms of parking demand, it's going to be less because we're proposing less number of bedrooms per unit. This is a little over 1 bedroom per unit, only a few 2-bedroom units in here. And bedrooms is really, they generate people, people generate cars. Some of the other developments we looked at that had higher parking ratios had more bedrooms, a lot more 2 and 3 bedrooms, which resulted in higher parking ratios per unit. So we're providing like 1.06 spaces per bedroom, and most of the surveys we found there was less than 1 space per bedroom. So we've exceeded that. We're providing 1.22 or 1.23 spaces per unit, which again exceeds the zoning code requirement. Staff would have been more comfortable at 1.3, so we're just under that. But again, because of the less bedrooms, we're generating less traffic or less parking, and that's kind of some of it.
Okay,
I'll be available for questions.
thank you.
I know I'm not the architect, but I am just going to point out two other changes that need to be addressed. One of the concerns that was mentioned to us on multiple occasions, originally along St. James, there were those units that were right above the garage, and there was actually sort of a terrace there that we initially proposed to have usable by the people living in those units. That's entirely been taken out. So there is no accessible terrace there. We understand the concern that the neighbors had. You know, people, it's hard to control people. You know, you have good neighbors and you have fair neighbors, is the best way I can put it. And so we don't want people having parties out there. We don't want to have to, we don't want to police it. That's the part, this is not all altruistic. We just don't want to even police it. So that area above the garage, which is now only one story above grade, not two, there is not going to be any, you know, public access to that from the resident there. So that was a real big issue that we tried to deal with that. And the other thing that when we talked about the entrance, or excuse me, the exit from the garage, it's not just signage. We are talking about a whole program, because we understand the concern that the neighbors have had, because they don't want cars going north to St. James. So there's going to be cameras. In the lease, there'll be something in the lease, the legal document that you signed to lease this, saying you can't go north. You have to go south. And if someone violates that, we have a program through our management company. This is not a self-managed project. This is managed by a nationwide management company. And if we catch you on camera, once, we'll slap your hand, twice, we'll fine you. We will have the right to fine people to do that, because we're that serious about not causing issues to the neighbors to the north of us. We understand they have a special neighborhood. We're not in that neighborhood. We're across the street from the neighborhood, but we understand it is a special neighborhood, especially to them. So we're going to put that into place. It will be part of the lease. We're happy to share that when we get to that point. You're going to see the leases anyway, because we're also doing the attainable housing, or the inclusionary housing, you know, portions of that on site. So all of those documents will be available. With that, we're happy to answer any questions that the board has.
Okay, thank you. Well, first I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Planning and Community Development, Charles Perkins. Mr. Perkins.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. What I'd like to do is just walk through the project and some of the zoning actions that are being requested, and a little bit of historic perspective on the property. So the developer is seeking a plan unit development to allow the 136 unit project that's being proposed. They are seeking a land use variation to not have ground floor commercial along the throughout the entire building. They have that very small kind of restaurant component. In our downtown, we require commercial operations and establishments on the first floor and residential above. So they are seeking that variation. And then conceptually, we've looked at the potential for a restaurant there. It's not being approved tonight. And one of the conditions is that they need to come back and seek a special use approval, either through the board or through the administrative waiver that we have in the zoning code. But we have looked at that restaurant as far as it goes from a conceptual level, from a primarily traffic point of view. And then they're seeking two variations. One is to allow 22 tandem parking spaces. So those are spaces where the cars, you're in the same spot in a line, so the longer space can accommodate two vehicles. And then in one section of the basement garage, they're seeking a variation from the 24-foot wide drive aisle to go down to 22.1 feet. So this is the site. I think everybody's familiar with it. It consists of two office buildings. They're pretty run down. They're probably Class C or D at best. Approximately 55,000 square feet. For the most part, I think they're pretty much vacant now. Then just to the east is the AT&T building. That's a large building that has a lot of infrastructure in it, with some significant fiber lines that run throughout the northwest suburbs, and it's unlikely that that would develop in the future. Not impossible, but that would be a significant investment to move. And then to the west is the bank. So everything south of St. James and west of Vale is zoned B5, and B5 is our downtown zoning district. So we looked at this project both, on the basis of, what the zoning code allows, and then also with the neighborhood to the north. So to the north, you can see to the northeast, listed with PL, that's public lands, that's the village-owned parking lot for commuter parking. And then to the northwest is zoned R3, that's the historic Arlington neighborhood known as Hannah, and a lot of older historic homes in that area. Earlier this year, or I should say later this summer, the Hannah neighborhood submitted a petition to rezone their property. So prior to August, the properties to the north, these 7 lots that are highlighted in kind of that brown color, was zoned R6. The neighborhood grouped together, filed a petition that both staff, the Plan Commission, and the Village Board approved in August to change that from R6, which is a kind of transitional R6 and R7, and I'll talk about that in a minute. That's a transitional buffer around the B5 to zone this to R3. So the neighborhood, the residents that invested in these homes, they're beautiful historic homes, and did not want to see a developer trying to assemble those properties and redevelop them, which was once the original vision of the downtown master plan. The same happened with the comprehensive plan. Previously, it was single-family detached. That's kind of a low, modest density zoning, and that was zoned to what we see today with the single-family detached. In 1965, on the left, this is an extract from the downtown master plan. You can see the site highlighted in red was envisioned for some type of development. And then to the north of that on St. James Street, you can see the kind of concept that was in the plan at that time for some kind of lower density, lower density multifamily with a parking courtyard. On the right, you see the 1987 downtown plan. Again, the property in question is highlighted in red, and that downtown plan reinforced the core area, the pink area as the B5 district, and the area in the yellow was what was known as a buffer zone for R6 and R7. And then in our current master plan in 2007, again, the area highlighted in this kind of orangey color was still shown for higher density residential development. The 2007 plan did recommend reducing the height. The current B5 height is 90 feet and allows up to 140 feet with bonuses. The plan recommended going to 70 feet as of right, and then going up to 100 feet with bonuses. Those changes were not approved. However, this project would meet that recommendation. It is within the 70 to 100 foot range that was recommended in the current downtown master plan. And then relative to the site itself, so in 1964, the village created the B5 zoning district, and the whole downtown was rezoned from B2 to B5, including this property. So this property has been B5 since 1964. And then in 1965, all land within 330 feet of the B5 district was rezoned to the R6. So that is probably why the Hannah neighborhood was zoned R6 at that time. And then also in 1965, the subject property was approved a PUD for one of the 3-story buildings, and then a 7-story residential structure. And then in 1968, that plan unit development was amended, and the 7-story residential structure was replaced with the second 3-story office building. And then the 1987 master plan that I mentioned changed some of those R6 areas to R7 as the buffer zone. And then more recently, as I mentioned, the Hannah neighborhood, grouped together and said, we want to preserve and downzone our property and protect it from intrusion and development within that area. Just to talk a little bit about context and properties around the downtown, this exhibit shows the R7 properties, both those that have developed and those that could develop as R7, and almost forms a ring around the downtown. There are a couple of exceptions, one being the site that we're talking about. And just representatively looked at a couple of sites. These are, again, R7 zoned, so they are more in the neighborhood that they're in. This particular one at 110 South Evergreen is a 6-story, 61 foot tall building. with single-family homes immediately adjacent to it. This site, 320 Campbell, another 6-story building, as best we can estimate, 56 to 58 foot in height. Again, the single-family homes, in this case, are zoned R3, immediately west, north, and southwest of it. And then last example is another one on Wing Street, another 6-story building, approximately 54, 55 feet, something in that range. Again, with single-family homes to the west and south. So these are the buffer areas that are right next to single-family, and then they were supposed to buffer the B5 district. So in May of 2023, the developer's original proposal was 150 units. This went to Plan Commission. Prior to Plan Commission, they had proposed 155 units that staff did not support. They were requesting a density variation at that time of 10 units, which is permissible under the inclusionary zoning ordinance to offset the affordable units that were proposed. At the time, they were proposing 10. So they were seeking a 1-for-1 ratio, which is permitted in that ordinance. The Plan Commission voted 2-4 in favor of an approval of the project, so that motion failed. The developer elected to work with staff and the neighborhood and had meetings with the neighborhood, trying to come up with a plan that addressed some of the concerns that the neighborhood had. Admittedly, I'm sure they have not addressed all of those concerns, but they have gone some way towards that. The current proposal is 136 units. I will point out, in comparison, they do have a lot of one-story or studio units, so that is 158 bedrooms, and most of our other developments have more bedroom counts. So they may have a lower unit, or in the case of one of the Hancock Square buildings, for example, they have 141 units, but they have 206 bedrooms. So you have to look at not just units, but you have to look at the bedroom count as well. And then they're seeking 2 variations that I described, the tandem parking and the drive aisle that I'll explain a little bit more later. But the tandem parking, the village has approved tandem parking variations. The most current example was in the Village Green development. There was a variation for some tandem parking spaces in that development. This is the land use variation request for not having commercial on the entire first floor. We don't feel this is appropriate site to have commercial on the entire first floor. It would add additional traffic and noise and demand and impact on the neighborhood. Our current office vacancy is about 20% in the community, better than many in the northwest suburbs because we've got a couple of big users that are expanding. But it's still, a high number. So we don't think, a new office building is viable. Maybe renovating the existing buildings is possible. Don't know. But this is the proposal that we have. I won't go through all the changes that the developers proposed. I think they've explained those. Everything from architecture to reducing one level from 7 stories to 6, and the upper story setbacks, changing the circulation into the property. We have looked at this as, from a B5 point of view. That's the zoning on the property. It is 76.8 feet to the top of the roof. That does comply with the current zoning requirements. We looked at, how is it consistent with the other B5 buildings that are being built downtown or proposed, and all but one are taller than this proposal as far as number of stories and comparable in height. The exception being Arlington 425. They have 2 buildings, one at 10 stories, 111 feet, and another at 5 stories at 58 feet. So we felt, the B5, it is consistent with the B5 zoning. We felt it was consistent with the goals of the comprehensive plan. And by providing the setbacks 10 feet on the first level, the original proposal had 1 foot. The 20-foot setback at levels 2 through 5, and then 50-foot setback on level 6. I will skip over the traffic. Parking-wise, they exceed the parking requirements by 27 spaces. Although parking was an area that we had concern, we have typically been trying to maintain developments at 1.3 spaces per unit. So we kind of broke this down and looked at the bedroom account, and we also looked at how this compared with, for example, Arlington 425. We did an in-depth study looking at the parking ratios for that project. So on a bedroom basis, they are at 1.06 spaces per bedroom. Arlington 425 is at 1.08 spaces per bedroom. And then if you include dens with Arlington 425, they're at 0.99 spaces per unit. So this one is comparable to Arlington 425 that was approved. They are at 1.23 spaces per unit. And so we have a number of conditions to address and make sure that parking is managed adequately for the project. So these are the 6 conditions. We want to make sure that residential parking spaces are leased separately. We don't want them bundled with a lease. So if somebody wants to lease a unit and they don't have a car, they shouldn't be required to pay for that space, and that space is free for somebody else. We have some restrictions on how many spaces, the 2 parking. If a bedroom or a unit owner wants 2 spaces, they have to be the tandem spaces first, and those are the priority. There's a maximum number of 2 space per unit that can be allocated. We are prohibiting the studios from having more than 1 space, and then no residential unit can have more than 2 spaces. So we've got a lot of restrictions on this, and then there are also requiring some guest parking in the garage itself, and there could be more than the 2 that's listed here, but we want to make sure there's that opportunity as well. We also had the developer put together a parking management plan, so going forward we can manage and maintain that. This color coordinating indicates the types of units that could to potentially lease a unit and have a space there. And I won't go through all of those, but clearly the blue are the tandem spaces for the 2-bedroom units or any unit that's looking for 2 spaces. We did look at a preliminary fiscal impact, and this isn't the only issue to look at. Obviously, the most important is the fit and does it comply with zoning, but we did want to look at what are some of the fiscal benefits of the project. So the current year, 2022 taxes, the property's paid $194,000 in property taxes. In year 1, we're estimating 2026, about $5,000 per unit. So they would pay about $681,000 in property taxes. There is the fee in lieu of for the 2.5% of units, and they're providing the 7 affordable units in the development. We then looked at information on CoStar on what the average spend was within a 2-mile radius. And the average spend is just over $18,000. So that's people buying goods and services and shopping for their groceries and going to restaurants and things like that. Multiplying that by the average downtown population ratio, which is about 1.35 persons per unit, equates to just over 3 million. We then have building permit fees, and then we have impact fees that go to the schools, the parks, and the library. So the 1-year benefit is over 4 million. Multiplied by 5-year, the annual benefit of property taxes and spend, and you're at over potentially over 21 million. We also looked at potential impact on school districts. We have 5 years of data of 11 buildings downtown, actual school enrollment from the high school and elementary districts. We use those ratios as well as the actual number of students in the Arlington Downs affordable units, because affordable units typically have a higher student ratio. And we applied those ratios and estimate there'll be approximately 7 students total, broken out between the high school and elementary districts. And then we looked at the percentage of the tax bill that the school districts have in the current year and in year 1 when the project is up and operating, and then the cost of educating those children on current dollars of what each school district provides. So it would have positive economic impact on the community. However, that's not the only reason to recommend approval of a project. So Staff Development Committee did recommend approval of it, but there are a lot of conditions to make sure the development is compatible and consistent with the neighborhood. I won't read all of these. They are in your packet. I'll just highlight a couple of them. First, on the outdoor deck and terrace area, there's a lot of rules and regulations and restrictions and the ability for further restrictions if there are issues. Second is we want a full detailed construction staging plan prior to the issuance of a permit, so we can make sure that construction is managed. Conversion from apartments to condominiums is restricted, primarily concern over parking. Condominiums typically have a little higher parking demand than apartments. That doesn't mean they couldn't make an application, come back to the village board, but they'd have to prove that up. There is the recommendation from the Housing Commission on compliance with the inclusionary housing ordinance for the 7 units included in the building, and then the fee of 2.5%. The parking restrictions that I referenced, and there are some loading regulations as well, limiting the hours of loading of both the commercial operations for the restaurant, the move-in, move-out of the residential, and where those have to occur. Condition 11 was the item that was removed by the Plan Commission, and they asked the village and staff to work out the difference between the 90-degree exit onto Highland versus the angled. The Engineering Division of Public Works still has concerns on the angled driveway exit due to potential to turn immediately into oncoming traffic. So the developer has agreed with village staff to do the 90-degree exit with stop control, with appropriate left turn signage, and with the other mechanisms that the petition talked about. There are other conditions as well. I won't go through all of them, but I'll be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
All right, thanks, Charles. Well, at the outset, I just wanted to thank everyone involved in this process, both the developer and the neighbors, the neighborhood, for their willingness to work together. In my 32-plus years on the village board, I'm not sure I ever have seen a greater example of collaboration between a developer and the surrounding neighborhood. And so I just wanted to thank all of you for that effort, which I think has resulted in a significantly better project than what was initially proposed. And so, again, that's really a credit to both the developer and to the residential neighborhood adjacent to it. I know there's still concerns, and so that's what we're here to talk about this evening, and we do have a number of blue cards. We will definitely hear your concerns, and I know the village board has been receiving a number of emails from all of you, and I know I've responded to everyone that I've received, and I know the village board has spent a lot of time on this, and including going to the neighborhood. We're all very familiar with this neighborhood, and so we spent a lot of time on this proposal because we want to make sure that we address everybody's concerns in one way or another. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the board for questions or comments. Who would like to ask the first question? Or should we, Trustee
I'll be brave
LaBedz?
and start. I guess it's not surprising, would be me. And I think first, I just want to say something, and then I want to ask a few questions, but I want to hear what the rest of the board has to say, as well as the neighbors who additionally who wish to speak tonight. And I think, first of all, it's only fair for the developer to know that I'm a resident of the Hannah neighborhood. You might know that already, or you might have Googled me and found it, but I live on Fremont Street, behind St. James on the south side of Fremont Street. Not in a historic home. At a little over 40 years old, it's actually the youngest single-family home in the neighborhood, I calculated. So, but I want to be upfront and let you know that. So I do have a number of questions. As I read through everything, I read through all the, as we all do, all the material, all the statements from the minutes from all the meetings and so on and so forth. And I have I'll go through some of the questions that I have. Some were already answered just through the the presentation by both the developer and by Mr. Perkins. The first question that I have, it has to do with the conditions regarding the outdoor amenities, the pool and so forth. And I guess I'm a little concerned about how would that be monitored? I mean, is it going to be just complaint-based? Are people going to be able to, how is that going to be controlled? Because, people can be out there. I see a head shake, if you would.
No, first of all, understand that we are very serious about all of this. We're not just putting this on paper, hopefully to get this project approved. There's a professional management on staff. They're there at the property. It will be their job to monitor this. It's not like waiting for someone to come with a complaint. If they hear or see, or if someone, is out there playing music very loud, which they're not supposed to do past the hours, they will tell that tenant or that tenant's guest to stop. So it's a proactive management. That's, I guess, the best way to put it. It's a proactive management, not a reactive management. And if for some reason we miss something and someone makes a complaint to the village, then I assume we'll hear that. It will happen. I pretty much know that, but it is a proactive management, and we will deal with that.
It's my understanding you would have management living in the building. Is that
Yes.
correct?
So they're there. They're living there. So they would be able to, again, proactively manage not just the outdoor deck, but the whole building itself.
Okay. So that answers some of that. When I read through it, it looks like the building is still only, even though you've sunk a story down, it's still only 6 feet shorter than it was. Is that, do I understand that correctly?
Katie?
So, yeah, we're currently at 76 feet to the top of the roof. I mean, I think that most likely, if we looked at the math, it's because we had basically 2 levels of podium previously, which were probably in both cases a greater floor to floor than the actual units above.
What do you mean by podium?
Through the garage.
The garage, exactly, and it had basically both garage space as well as room for that pool deck to be, submerged essentially below the amenity level, as well as a slightly higher space for retail at the first floor.
So the lower floors are taller. Is that what you're telling me?
Correct. And I'd have to look back at the numbers from our previous to know exactly what the differential was, but it may not be, exactly 1 story in height difference. Correct, because on the north, as Joe is pointing out, we have essentially a 50-foot setback to that 6th floor, and so basically we have an even lower roof height on the north side of the building.
Right. I appreciate the setbacks that were done, but why weren't there any additional ones done from between the top of the parking garage on the north side specifically, and then where you then go to the deeper 50-foot setback?
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of an incremental, I guess, moments where setbacks make sense. So essentially, we did basically at that 2nd floor, there's an additional 10-foot setback until the units begin. And then at the 6th floor, we basically remove a row of units on the north. It doesn't make sense to remove the width of half of a row of units because there's kind of nothing you can do with that space, if that makes sense.
Well, it makes sense, but I guess I would have preferred to see something that was a little more stepped on that side of the building.
Okay.
The other thing we have is at the garage level, we still have to fit in all the parking spaces. There's a module that you have to meet. And we have sunk it. I hate to bring the cost word into this, but there is an extreme cost.
Appreciate
to
that.
garage. So we went a full floor down. That was not part of the original plan.
I understand. Yeah.
That's the sort of the trade-offs we're asking on this one.
All right. Speaking of the garage, since it is, 1 floor below and fully enclosed, which does solve certain issues, the mechanical ventilation, how do you control the sound, the noise coming from that?
It's
No, but there hasn't been mechanical ventilation. When we start working on the actual permit drawings and we work with our MPE engineer, we know that there's some rules that have to be followed. we'll try to aim everything away or
Yeah.
buffer it
No, I
as it
think,
would be
long
required.
story short, the equipment hasn't yet been located. And so I think as part of the, next step of development, when we move into construction documents, we can be very intentional about where the equipment
Well,
lives.
because that's definitely a concern, because I can tell you, if this building is approved and built, I will be the one that will get an awful lot of complaints if
Understand.
those are noisy, so.
We hear you.
So, and I
Absolutely-
prefer
we
not
absolutely
to.
understand. We will work, staff, the building department will look at all those issues, and we'll work with them to make sure that it's the proper size equipment, because that's a big issue. Is do you have one really large unit? Do you have a bunch of smaller units? The smaller ones may work. I don't know. I'm not a mechanical engineer. I play one on TV occasionally, but, so we just have to work once we start choosing that equipment, sit down with staff, and we'll figure out what's the best way to put it. So to avoid you getting doorbells, knocks, and stuff
Thank
like
you.
that.
I think I have a few other questions, thanks. Where does Milo come from?
We'll let Joe answer that one.
Milo is short. Hi, I'm Joe Taylor, by the way. Milo is short for my love. This is what I do. This is what I love to do, and that's just the combination of the two words. That's all it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. All right. So I'm glad, Mr. Perkins, that you mentioned that a restaurant is not part of the approval tonight. That's something that I would be concerned about if project is approved and built, given its proximity to, single-family homes, what type of a restaurant it would be, how late it would be open, all those sorts of things. A sports bar compared to a breakfast and lunch type place, which lately seems to be all the rage, that makes a difference.
We will come forward with the full application. We will provide the information in terms of hours of operation, employees, what type of restaurant. I don't think the food is necessary, but whatever we need to do.
Nature of,
Whatever we need to do, we will, of course, come forward at that time.
okay.
And hopefully receive approval for that. We think it's a nice amenity for the building. It's also at the far end of our site. So while I agree that it could have some detrimental effects, it's pretty far away, and we think that it should fit in quite well.
And part of the concern that I have about something like that is, of course, the parking for a restaurant. There are likely to be, again, should it be approved, people who are within walking distance who would come and eat there, but not everybody will. In fact, we know that from al fresco, that a lot of people come from out of town. And we also know, I hear complaints, I think others do, about people having to drive around and around to find a place to park. And I know that there's the village parking lot S there, which would be a great place for people to park, because after noon on weekdays, it's free, and free on weekends. I know this, but I can also tell you, I know this from living nearby, people just don't. They just don't park there. So that becomes a concern, and how you would absorb the parking issue, because there wouldn't be really a lot of parking spots for this property, or for the restaurant located specifically on the parking. And again, because also part of that would be for guests too.
We have looked at that lot. We think some of that is training. Right now, it doesn't appear, at least to us, that you're right, people don't use it for that sort of overflow parking. We're not sure why they would use it, other than for maybe the library and the farmer's market.
Well, the farmers, it's used for the farmer's market,
but
and yeah.
If we're lucky and we have a restaurant with some draw to it, people will learn that they can park there and just park there, walk down. So that's our intention, is that they would also be able to use it for that reason, because they'll learn, they'll be trained.
Okay, well, good luck.
We'll see.
Hey, just know what it's like living around there.
We
So,
understand.
I can tell you that people, the Historical Society will have great nighttime programs, but people will park all the way down dark Fremont Street rather than in a well-lit parking lot. So it's pretty hard to train people.
We'll work with
They
people.
think they need to park on a street.
Yes.
So I think those are all the questions that I
Thank you.
have now. I appreciate your responses. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions from the board? Trustee Bertucci.
It's basically some questions for either, for staff, either Randy or Charles. And Charles, can you go to the one slide that said current zoning downsizing? It was kind of an aerial.
This one, Trustee
The-
Bertucci?
That one might do also. Okay. So my question is, that on the bottom of that slide, we see the bank, the back of the bank. And I'm trying to get an idea of where this building will be, because we see that there's two residences that will be directly across the street from this property. And I'm concerned for those residences that, you know, although it's obvious that the developer has done a lot to make changes, but I'm wondering if we could somehow or other further carve out a little bit on that northwest corner. But anyways, what is the setback? Do we know what the setback of the bank building is? Which is also kind of abutted, and then I know there's landscaping there also. But do we have a sense of that compared to what the proposal is for the project?
I don't know exactly what that setback is, but looking at the driveway on the east side of the property, if that's a 24-foot wide driveway, I'd estimate the building setback to be around 18 to 20 feet, but that's just a very rough ballpark. Don't hold me to that.
Okay. Charles, you know, I just like to aggravate you anyways. Okay, so now the proposed project, the setback for, and I know it's the first or second floor, whatever, before there's a bump in, but what will that be proposed to be again?
So the first floor will be set back 10 feet.
Okay.
And the current office building looks like right at the property line.
Yeah,
And then the second through fifth floors will be set back 20 feet.
okay.
And then the sixth floor is set back another 30 feet. So the sixth floor is 50 feet
Okay.
setback.
Okay. All right. I mean, because that's one concern I have. The other is, can you go to the Evergreen building, the one that's south of Sigwalt that you used as an example? Okay. So I'm very familiar with this corner because I live kitty corner in the Evergreen building there. But so I'm concerned that that's not a fair comparison, because first of all, across the street those are not single-family homes, and this street between Sigwalt and going south on Evergreen is a developing street, and you probably know that. I mean, it's kind of being changed over to brownstones, and it's getting changed over to more multi-family, and not so much on the, and some of the single families homes are getting bought up and with changes made, kind of.
That's
almost,
correct. Evergreen is zoned R6, and there's a whole variety of different units going south on Evergreen from Sigwalt. And I didn't mean to represent this as an example. It was more, a reference for how the step down was originally planned and intended, from the B5 as the core, and then going down to the buffer zone that was part of the original plans and still part of the plan today. That was more the example I was trying to illustrate.
Okay, fair enough. So, yes, because I'm just concerned that we do have the historic neighborhood there, and I'm trying to be as sensitive as possible to maybe some remaining negotiations that might be able to be done on that northwest corner of the property. Okay, so also I'd like to get a better understanding of where the loading areas are. I'm living in downtown Arlington Heights. I'm very sensitive to loading, not only where they load and unload, where the residents are move in and out, and deliveries are made, so on and so forth.
So Trustee Bertucci, this is the loading area here. So off Eastman, there are 2 overhead garage doors, and then this is the loading area, and then there are, doors, double doors going into the lobby area and double doors going into, the storage and refuse area. I think this is the trash room. I can't read that text. It's a bit small on my screen.
So those loading areas are inside the building, Charles?
Yes, that's
I
correct.
mean, so basically, like say a move-in truck would back into the garage door into that building?
I don't know that the clearance, I don't know what the clearance is for a moving truck to back into there. A lot of our buildings, they do call up the police department, when they've got move-ins and are allowed to move in off the street. We have restricted all loading and move-ins to the Eastman location, though.
And it's meeting the 14-foot clearance that's actually required by zoning.
Okay.
Vertical.
Okay, so you could actually back a semi that's a moving.
Correct, and well, semi, probably not, but we're not anticipating anyone's moving in with a semi. But any, standard moving vehicles. And so just to clarify also, so we have a trash room that's kind of immediately to the, I guess, plan south of where that loading area is.
Okay.
And then everywhere that you see that dashed line is the path that's a moving or delivery vehicle would be able to take in order to get goods into the kitchen below.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, that's all I have right now, Mayor. I'd be interested in also hearing from the rest of the board and some of the neighbors.
Okay. Anybody else from the board? Trustee Shirley?
So I don't know who answers this, but why not condominiums to start with? Why rental?
I build apartments. I don't build condos, and quite frankly, it's near impossible to finance a condominium development in the suburbs.
Is that just a
it's
recent
impossible.
development?
It's hard
with
enough
interest
to,
rates, or what's
no,
what's
it's
driving
just
that?
it's just the amount of sales that you have to have in order just to be able to qualify for the loan. You have to do a bunch of pre-sales before.
Oh,
And so I've never done a condominium. I don't plan on ever doing a condominium,
Okay.
especially in the suburbs.
okay.
But for whatever this is worth, and I'll add this, it has been 15 years since I've represented a developer doing a condominium in any of the suburbs. There's been a couple of projects that have gone forward, and I hate to say this, they've become rental apartments. It's just the way the market is right now as we speak, to actually buy a condominium, a brand-new condominium, it's incredibly difficult to qualify for the loans. I mean, we're all reading about this. Now the interest rates have gone up, and it's very, very difficult. So there's a combination of what Joe builds, but it's more than just what Joe builds.
Sure.
We couldn't build the project. We couldn't finance it.
Yeah.
Do a condominium on this project.
But just as a matter of a note, is just that this doesn't have to be developed right now, as far as Arlington Heights is concerned, or at least as far as I'm concerned.
We understand.
Been sitting that way for God knows how long, and I don't see any immediacy to developing this property. That's just my own personal opinion. Secondly, Charles, can you show us at the second floor where the pool deck is?
Yeah, I think that's on the presentation.
And the pool deck faces west?
Faces west, correct.
Yeah.
Why not south?
Because we wanted to shade it. We wanted, not shade it, we wanted to bury it in the building so it would have the least amount of impact on the neighbors. Because if you do it, otherwise everything would have to move over. It would not work with the way the plans are.
Okay. Because I'm just thinking that the pool deck could be a source of noise. And if you faced it south, it would
I can't
be less
argue, but
impact.
that's why the recommendations are so stringent upon what will happen there. We're going to monitor it proactively. And if it gets something bad, something gets too noisy, we will take action on it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It just, the way people play their music and such now, it seems to me like facing it east, which obviously there's a brick wall there, but south would be more palatable, you know, to the single-family neighborhood to the north.
This is also, we're going to own the building. Joe and his partners are going to own the building. We don't want to create an issue for our other neighbors who aren't down by the pool either. So it behooves us. This is not all altruistic. Part of it was to shield from the neighbors to the north. And part of it is because we want to make sure that the people living in the building don't have issues either, because then they won't release. So there's a combination of things happening here. When you look at any of these buildings, and you guys have been doing this for a long, long time and built incredible buildings, or approved incredible buildings in downtown Arlington Heights, which is where we're at. And there's some back and forth on this. And so those are really the two reasons that's being located that way.
Okay.
And we're going to worry about that.
Okay, and I don't doubt your sincerity about managing the pool. I just know that people and times change, and what's promised now, 3 years from now, doesn't always come to fruition. That's just
You also only have
that's
it-
just human nature. It's just the
We agree.
reality of things.
But you also only have it how many months out of the year?
I think the other thing that I would add, just in terms of the configuration, is that a lot of what we've heard, I believe, from the village and from the other commissions, is there's really desire to locate the more dense aspects of the project to the south, to Eastman. That's really where the density wants to be, and that's why we have really the highest part of the building along Eastman.
Okay. And then I know the east elevation, you know, I just unhappy with that as far as just being a big solid brick wall, basically.
Well, but
And I think that I get that the AT&T building is there now, but nothing lasts forever. And I just think that the project would be better if there was some setback at ground level. You don't have enough space to walk dogs for people in the buildings. They're going to be tending over to the single-family neighborhood to walk dogs, which, you know, you can't prevent that. But I just think that stepping down to the east would be beneficial from a long-term approach, because AT&T may not be there forever. And I just think that what's going to happen is you're going to put up that brick wall. And I know you got a second floor dog run, but then what's going to happen is when AT&T redevelops, they're going to say they just want a big old brick wall up there because there's a brick wall from your development there.
No,
And it seems to me like, why not create some green space
I think
along that east elevation to provide a place for people to walk their dogs from the building? And we're all about green, right? Aren't we, everybody, right? Everybody's knocking themselves over to get green. Let's provide some more green space along the ground level where people can walk their dogs.
Yeah, no, I understand. I think the first floor, our really highest concern was being able to get as much parking as possible on site. And so we've already really maximized that, and we can't add any green space without
Have
taking
you thought about like a second
significant.
floor of parking below the first floor parking? You can go down.
We did go down.
We did. We've got a
You
full.
can go down
We
another
have a
one.
full level below.
But you could go down another one, right?
No,
No?
You can't afford it.
nobody.
Oh, okay. So it's cost. It's not an engineering.
Now, physically,
Right.
you could do it. Please
Right.
don't get me
I-
wrong. I'm not saying that you physically
Okay.
can't do it, though I'm not really sure on this
It-
side.
We don't know about the water table, but
But it is overly expensive to go down even another level on there. All I can say is, and you're absolutely right, we don't know what's going to happen 25 years from now. We approached AT&T. Both Joe and I knew someone who was working with them on reuse of their buildings, and the answer that they had is, we have big cables coming up the middle of the floor in that building. Those are not going away, so go away. And they just literally told us to go away. They don't want to sell it. Now, again, 25 years from now, I agree with you. We don't know what's going to happen 25 years from now.
Yeah. Okay.
And for what it's worth, we did actually slightly enhance the design of the upper levels of the east facade based on some recommendations from the Design Commission. Initially, those two kind of legs of the H had been basically straight across at the property line. We intentionally are carving them back in order to create windows along that facade. So I mean, it's not as good as the other three facades, but we are trying, because we know that the upper levels will be visible.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's all I have for now.
Trustee Grasse.
Thank you. I don't really have questions. I just wanted to make some comments, if that's okay. First, I want to agree with a lot of the comments made, especially Mayor Hayes. I really appreciate the collegial nature from the developer and the neighbors in working out some things that work better for the neighborhood, and I really do appreciate that. And I just really want to say I appreciate your buying the property and wanting to build here, create your project, the project you love doing here in Arlington Heights. I really do appreciate that, and I truly do thank you for the changes made. I think the quote was out of sensitivity to the lower scale developments in the area. I think I read that somewhere in what I was reading. And just really addressing the neighborhood concerns. And those changes you made were plenty. You changed the main entrance. You dealt with the garage lights, the pool party deck noise, the loading deck, garage entrance, the new facade. I have to say I really do appreciate the look of it. It seems to fit better in the historical traditional part of the neighborhood. The first thing I thought of when I saw the new facade was it reminded me a little bit more of like the historical building and all of that there. It seemed to fit, that new facade seemed to fit better. It seemed to be a little more in character with the historic neighborhood and the building and the homes. And the underground parking was another piece that you changed. And I guess what I just really wanted to comment on that I've been thinking about is that this area is really the genesis of our community of Arlington Heights. And there really needs to be, as I see it, special care to preserve and honor and maintain this special community for the current residents, but also for the future. And I know the Planning Commission has said that all of these changes comply with the zoning, with the various variations that are asked for. And my ultimate question is then, does this fit? And that's something, you know, I want to hear the rest of the comments from the board and for those people speaking tonight. And we have received a lot of emails too, and I thank you for all of that. But my question really is, does it fit? And as I've been looking at this and hearing from the neighbors also, there really are two areas that I would love to see more of a compromise with to really seem to make it fit. And the first is that setback of 10 feet. You know, looking at the Sigwalt 16 project, I know that was not initially approved by the board because they wanted the higher building, but as I was looking, the setback seems to be more than 10 feet, but they did approve the lower building as more of something that transitions from the residential into the higher height buildings. So I really, you know, what concerns me is that 10-foot setback, and also for the residential area that there's not as much of a step up. Going, you know, the first floor is good, but then it jumps up to 5 stories. And to me, it just seems that what would fit in easier would be more of a step. And I just want to say that those are the two areas that for me would help me feel that it fit in best with the community. And so I just really wanted to offer those comments, and I want to hear what the rest of the people have to say.
Right.
Thank you.
Trustee Tinaglia.
Thanks, Mayor Hayes. Well said. You actually spoke about a lot of the things that I was going to say, and the word is fit. The word is fit. Let me start by saying the petitioner and his team has done an outstanding job. The design is beautiful. The work that's been created so far, I think, is fantastic. Staff, Charles, your presentation with all the history here was outstanding. It was very educational. Thank you for feeding us with all the information that helps us do our job here. I agree with everything that everybody said so far. And the key thing here is fit. Charles, how fast and how difficult it would be for you to find out and share with us tonight the setback for Sigwalt 16 and also the Chestnut Building for Arlington 425? And the reason I bring those two buildings up is because it is directly across from R6 and I think even R3, single family on the other side of the street. And if I'm not mistaken, they're more like 20 or 25 feet on those sides of the street, which is compatible with the residential district across the street. What's interesting is that this community recently just did that whole rezoning by virtue of their own accord. I should say I live in that community. I'm a Hannah resident. I did not vote on that. I had no participation in that because I knew that this was coming, and I didn't want to have any issues with what might have been done or what might have been said. This is not my project. It's not anything that I want to have any controversy over. My goal here tonight is to help make sure that what ultimately does get approved here, and I hope something does, I want it to be compatible, and I want it to be comfortable. And you have all spoken very eloquently on how you want to be good neighbors and you want to, manage and exceed expectations, and I'm sure you mean that, and as I would expect you would. These residents in the neighborhood expect that from you, and so that's a great, step in the right direction. But does this building fit as it is designed? It will fit somewhere. It's because it's a beautiful building. OKW has done a great job on this project, both times, the first one and this one. I'm afraid it may not fit as nicely as it should for this piece of property because of where it is and what is directly across the street. In particular, the two items that were just spoken about from Trustee Shirley and Trustee Grasse, the location of that pool facing west, to me, is a missed opportunity. It should be facing south, absolutely. The setback along Eastman being 10 feet, I think, is just too small. And along with that is the upper story straight-up wall. It should have additional setbacks to get to the 5 or 6 stories, whatever it ends up there. So all of the nice things, all of the wonderful things that have been accomplished so far, I'm afraid that there's still more work to do. And if that can't happen, I understand that. But I could not approve this project as it is here tonight, the way it is. I could not vote in favor of it. Charles, did I put you on the spot, terribly, or do you know what those setbacks are?
Yeah, I'm looking it up now.
Okay. You can get back to us later. I'm done with my commentary. I know there's a lot of folks here that want to speak, and I don't mean to take up any more time than I should.
Right.
That's really it.
Before we move on, Charles, can you just put up this rendering of the St. James view that shows the setback?
Yes, just bear with me a second. Oops. Which one were you looking
It's
for?
the view
Mayor?
from St. James.
That was it, the one you just passed. That is it.
It's not the same one.
Yep. So there's
Okay,
four-
well, it does show it. It does show it.
Yeah.
So, I'm looking at what the setback is. If that's 10 feet, that looks okay to me, to be honest with you. And if you look at the extension from the existing AT&T building, which is 0 setback, right? Goes right up to the sidewalk. So this 10-foot setback with the green space there on the other side of the sidewalk is attractive to me, and I think is sufficient setback. But I'm just looking at it from what I see on this rendering. So I would not be in favor of an additional setback. I think 10 foot is fine. So Trustee Dunnington, and then did you already go, Trustee Bertucci?
I did, but
Yeah.
I want to have a question on that.
Okay. Go ahead and follow up on that setback issue.
Okay, what we're looking at is you look at the corner of the building, which would be this is the northwest corner, and it appears as if they're trying to say, well, what if somebody was standing here at the residence? But this is not the first, this driveway, so to speak, is not the first residential home. There's actually, take half of the building, and half of the building, there are homes still across the street from that. So I don't want to, I'm certainly not saying that this is deceiving, but there are homes further to the east as you get closer as you go further east that are directly across the street from there. And this is not actually a picture, this is an architectural drawing. So I'm not saying that that the drawing is not accurate, but it's not giving a direct picture. I mean, am I, maybe somebody who's better accustomed to these types of drawings, but that would be my impression.
There are two homes that have part of their frontage essentially overlapping our site. But it's probably at most a third of the site, a quarter of the site. And the rest of it is already basically public property. But, I guess just to, again, kind of reinforce, so we're looking at basically a 10-foot setback from the property line plus a significant right-of-way, all to that first north face of the parking garage, another 10 feet to the orange brick that you see above, and then a total of 50 to get to that top 6th level. And so to us, this actually is kind of already doing the stepping that I think a lot of you all are describing. Just to also call attention to the parking situation, we're really, trying to pay close attention to maximizing parking as much as possible. And if we were going to look at including a further setback at grade, we would be losing parking not only on the first floor, but also probably on the basement level as well in order to align those foundations.
All right, Trustee Dunnington.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. I just want to start and say thank you to the developer for bringing this project to us. Thank you so much to the residents. All your emails are appreciated. And thanks to staff for the explanation of the project. A couple of things that I don't think we've mentioned yet. I'm wondering if there is any kind of pickup zone in front of the property. I'm thinking of pickup zone for things like an Uber or DoorDash, or someone is going to get a ride. I don't see any kind of like curb cutout or an area where someone or where Amazon trucks are coming, UPS. Where would that
Does
happen?
does the village have a plan in place for buying spaces to accommodate that? So the public spaces that are in front of the building, is there a plan that a developer can basically buy those spaces
The parking right in
Yeah.
front.
to create the drop off?
We have not sold an on-street space.
Not sell it, but to
right.
be able to,
Sell the rights, sure.
exclude those in front of the building directly, is because what other use would there be?
Yeah, I mean, we have talked about where they have their driveway, and it's a public street, so the village controls this. But on Eastman, they have their driveway here. There is a minimum distance that you have to have before you can have a parking space, so you have site visibility. It's possible that could be extended to allow for smaller vehicles to pick up and drop off, not large deliveries, without losing a lot of parking spaces. It may be able to fit. We would have to look at the striping plan for Eastman, as part of this. If this were to get approved, once they come in for a permit, we can take a look at that. The sidewalk itself is, we are asking for a small easement from the property owner to make sure we have a wide enough sidewalk to be ADA accessible. So to do a cut-in would not be feasible, but Eastman is a very wide street at that point, so I'm sure there could be something that could be accommodated there.
And it's not widely trafficked at the current moment. So.
I just didn't want to see a lot of backup on Eastman when people are waiting for a ride or anything.
And we do have some on-street short-term pickup drop-off areas, like in front of Dunton Towers and some of the other buildings. And, that's definitely preferable than a vehicle double parking and blocking the driving lane.
Okay. Also, if some maybe restaurant patrons or guests park at the Village Bank parking lot, would there be a crosswalk to get across Highland? I think there's going to be a stop sign there, but going across to the parking lot, what would that look like?
So Highland itself, from Eastman North, is private. So that's privately owned. That's not a village-owned street. So they certainly could install a crosswalk, to the driveway into the bank. They used to have a shared parking agreement between the bank and, this property when it was an office building. I don't know that the extra parking still is part of that agreement if it redevelops, but they could try to renegotiate something.
Okay. Is the entrance to the restaurant from the lobby of the building? Okay. All right. And this would probably be for staff. Is there any concern with the 425 building and then also this building that there would be an oversaturation of rents in the area?
That's not what we're seeing in market studies that are being submitted and absorption rates in other developments. In fact, many of the developments that are provided in those market studies are normally you would have a 5% vacancy rate. A lot of the existing newer developments are in the 97, 98% occupied rate. And the last study I looked at for the Gateway project down on Arlington Heights Road, they were projecting continued strong growth in rent rates as well.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Trustee Baldino.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, let me say thank you to the petitioner for all the work and rework that they've done. And let me echo my thanks to the residents for all their comments. And the team that has worked to bring this before us tonight. Two questions that I have. Leaving the slide right where it is, I got the impression that the garage entrance off of Eastman was one way. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
It is correct. It's one way through there. Okay. Right. And then, so there's a loading zone there, and we were talking earlier about backing into the loading zone, but that's not the way that's envisioned to go. It's envisioned to be one way off of Eastman and then out onto Highland.
Correct. The exit is exit onto Highland. That's the only exit into the garage.
Okay.
And the requirement is for signage and everything for southbound onto Highland.
Right. Okay.
And we did talk about a one-way, and the challenge with a one-way is then everybody has to go through the neighborhood through St. James to get to the development one way or the other. So a one-way system really would not work.
Right. Okay. Second question is, I'm trying to fix the distance from the north facade to St. James Street in my head. And I'm looking at the architectural plans. And it says that there's a 10-foot setback for the first floor, the parking garage. But the plan that I have says that it's 10 feet back from the sidewalk. What is the right-of-way from that 10-foot setback to St. James? It looks to me like it's a total of 18 feet.
So St. James's Street itself is a narrower street than normal. I don't know exactly the width. It's either probably around 28 feet. Normally it would be 32 feet. Our typical right-of-way is 60 feet. So assuming it's 60 feet, and the home to the north is, because it's an older neighborhood, probably doesn't have a 25-foot front yard setback. A lot of those homes have a smaller setback. So let's say it was around 15 feet. And then the setback of this building, 10 feet. So you might be around 80, 85 feet from the first floor of the garage to the front of the house.
No, I'm not talking about to the house.
Oh, okay.
From the south curb of St. James Street to the building. We've been talking about how there's a 10-foot setback, but there's more than 10 feet there.
Yeah, I think the development team should have the survey or the engineering plan. Do you have that? Or I can pull it up.
That's the way it looks. Trustee Schwingbeck just said that it's 18 to 20 feet. That's the way it looks in the plans.
Just give us your name if you would.
Hi, I'm Maureen Mulligan, RWG Engineering. So it is about 13 feet from the back of the curb to the edge of the sidewalk. The sidewalk is 5 feet, and then it looks like there's about another 2 feet to the property line. So it's probably close to 20 feet from the property line to the back of the curb, plus the additional 10 foot of setback of green
Okay.
space.
That's the answer. So we're 30 feet from the curb on St. James Street to the building facade. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, that looks correct. So I'm looking at the engineering plan.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry that was painful to get to, but I'm struggling with the same question. Does this fit? And I don't know at this point that it does or it doesn't. And I'm still waiting to hear additional comments, how other people are weighing in. But it boils down for me to that very question that Trustee Tinaglia said, does it fit? And I have not made up my mind yet on whether or not I feel like it does or doesn't. So I'm hoping to hear more input that will help me reach that decision. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, Trustee
Mayor, I
Schwing.
do have the answer to the question that Trustee Tinaglia had whenever you would like.
Okay, go ahead, Charles.
So the Sigwald 16 building, that's zoned R7. The setback on Chestnut is 25 feet. The setback on Sigwald is 20 feet, and the setback from Highland is 20 feet. Arlington 425, the Campbell building is setback 7 feet from the new property line. There was an 8-foot right-of-way dedication. And the Chestnut building was set back 12 feet from the new right-of-way line with the same 8-foot dedication.
All right, Trustee Schwingbeck.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have any questions. I mean, the presentation, Charles, was wonderful. You guys did a great job. When I look at this project, I really am trying to put myself in the shoes of the residents in the neighborhood. I've spent a lot of time walking over there. I went over there a couple of times over the weekend and again today. And I've read through all your emails. I've responded to a few of you. I tried to go over there at around noon today because several of you in your emails to all of us were talking about the close proximity of this building and the blocking out of the sun. I tried to go over at noon. I know the sun is a little lower this time of the year than in the summer, and I tried to see where the shadows were at noon with the 3-story building and what it might look with this 6-story building. I looked at the pictures you put up, Charles. It looks like maybe a house and a half is on this building. If this were further down the street in front of the bank where more homes were affected, I'd probably be thinking a little differently. I know this project has been talked about for a while now, and yet when I walked the street today, I saw a lot of the neighbors on that street. I think there's 5 houses, putting some money into their homes, doing some nice remodeling on the outside. And you know, I tried to put myself in your shoes. If I knew that something like this was coming, would I be spending money on a house if I owned one on that street? And it was nice to see that. I think there were 3 projects going on that block where you folks felt like you really wanted to continue to put money in your home and fix it up. And I know you guys are very proud of your neighborhood. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing from all of you. I've read your emails, but I want to hear from you guys because that's probably what counts for me the most. So thank you.
All right, with that, then we're going to go to the audience. And so I do have a number of blue cards here. You're just all reminded of the 3-minute time limit. And what I will do is read the first card and then read the name for the individual who's on deck. So you know to get yourself ready to go. So we've got a few more cards. And so the first individual is Karen Asa. Karen? And then next on deck is Max. It's either Ryan or Ruan. Ryan? Max. Go ahead.
So thank you, everyone. I really appreciate your taking the time to listen to our concerns. We've invested so much in our neighborhoods and in our homes, and we have been really thankful to be working with the developer to come up with some kind of a solution for this project. But I think overall, the concerns that we still have to this day is that we are struggling with the same question of, is this a good fit for our neighborhood? We are all long-term residents that have invested greatly in the community, and we have really made this a part of, we really feel like we belong to a great part of the village, and we set the tone for the community. We're welcoming. We like all of the activity that the village brings. One thing that we struggle with this project is that it doesn't fit anything in our neighborhood. When you look around, everything is proportionally 3 to 4 stories at maximum, more, usually less. And we're in a position, we bought homes on a single family street adjacent to businesses. So I am one of the homes that is directly across from the building, the proposed site. And I think that, my concerns go to everybody else's in terms of the overall height and the density of the project itself. So some of the issues that I have is that, although it's within all of the limits, that the ordinances approve, it's still a really big building. It's, at 76.8 feet tall, it just towers over all of our homes. And the number of units will double the number of residences on our streets. We're a small neighborhood bound by 2 very big streets, so we end up being kind of a pass-through, but we also are going to be really increasing the density of the number of people. So it just becomes a struggle for me to think of the overall impact and the long-term impact for our neighborhood. I have 2 unique concerns that might not affect the other residences, and then one is the sunshade. Looking at the proposal on the architectural plans, the sunshade study shows that my house and our next door neighbor's house will be in complete darkness. Our entire yard will be at the one point in December in the morning hours. But that means that at some point, for extended periods in the weeks before and after, it will be, less or incrementally, less dark, but it will still be, that's a huge impact for me, and that may not affect all the other neighbors, but it will cast a big shadow in the neighborhood that we just don't have now. I think the other concern that is unique to me is in looking at the construction plan, and they've staged the construction trailer in the parkway right across the street from my house. So, and that will be temporary, but it will be for an extended period of time. The materials apparently are staged also on St. James Street too. So in terms of the overall parking and the density issues, I think the height and density kind of speak to kind of the largest issues, and I would hope that the board would require some additional setbacks to lessen those issues. So Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Karen. Next is Max. Max, what's your last name? Ryan. It is Ryan, okay. And then on deck is Vivian Menzies.
All right. First, I want to thank the board for your guys' service to the community. I really do appreciate it. I'm here to speak in favor of the development for three big reasons. First is environmental. Next is fiscal, which we already talked about a bit. And then for affordability reasons. So why is this project good for the environment? When communities like ours deny dense developments like this, we are contributing to the ever-expanding suburban sprawl out in Huntley and Pingree Grove. And when people live out there, they have to drive everywhere. They got to drive 20 minutes to a grocery store, 20 minutes to drop their kids off, half an hour to work. That's more traffic, more cars on the road, more air pollution, whereas the 150 people living here wouldn't even really need a car. Everything is walkable. Not to mention the natural space lost to the sprawl that I'm talking about. There's just natural space is paved over and replaced with sterile lawns, single-family homes, and a bunch of asphalt. Also, the units here, no matter how efficient a single-family house is, it will never be as energy efficient as an apartment. It's just a more efficient development. That is why the Sierra Club and other places like that support dense developments. Speaking of efficiencies, we did talk about some of the fiscal impacts of this, but we did miss one. Again, roads. It costs the village pretty much the same to maintain a city block road, right? Whether there's 10 families there or 100 families there, there's a big difference in what kind of property tax you're taking in. So there's a big fiscal impact there that wasn't counted in all the other measures I saw there. And then finally, this development is the right thing to do just for affordability reasons. I was very interested to hear that Trustee Dunnington was worried that there might be an oversaturation of the market for rentals. And what would that actually mean if we managed to oversaturate the market? That would be money in the pockets of Arlington Heights renters. Because for the last 10 years, people have been getting pay raises, but the rent's been going up faster. And the only way to put downward pressure on housing costs is to build more housing. And the only way we can build more housing in Arlington Heights is to build up. So that's it for me. I hope you guys approve it. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Max. Next is Vivian Menzies, and then her other half, Greg Menzies.
Thank you for reading all of our emails and listening to all our concerns. I really do appreciate that. The design of this building is lovely. It's improved vastly from the beginning, but I think the big issue comes back to what a couple of you have mentioned is just, does it fit? And in my opinion, it doesn't. One thing about this whole process is where we live, we are constantly being threatened by some sort of a development. Over the time that my husband and I have lived in our home, we've had, well, this is the fourth major one. In 1979, there was an 18-story high-rise that was going to be built on Evergreen, and that's where the two homes on St. James were going to be torn down for a parking lot. That's when Hannah started. We needed to organize and protect our neighborhood, and we were successful. In 2000, there was a plan to build a parking garage at the corner of Vale and Fremont with a visitor center and offices for the Historical Society. This was kind of a half-baked plan, and it fell apart. In 2017, Bryan Properties was going to build two buildings at the other end of Memorial Park at Fremont and Walnut with 106 units. We organized again, and that project was not built. And then here we are with the Eastman project. Our neighbors are getting tired. We are constantly dealing with going to meetings and organizing to preserve the character of our neighborhood. And really, it's not that we're against all development. I can give you several examples of development that we have not protested against. One was that a third story was added to the Park Place Apartments at the corner of Park Place and Chestnut. Another one, a big one, was when Fremont Street was closed off east of Vale so that the library could be doubled in size. It was a benefit to the whole community, not just to the residents where we live. And then a third one was the demolition of an old home on Park Place to build a 4-unit quad. We've got a variety of public buildings, single-family, multifamily. The key is that they all fit in size and scale. The successful developments were sized appropriately, and they blend in and they enhance our neighborhood. The Eastman project does not do that. It is too big, it's too massive, it will dwarf the homes across the street. It'll change the character of the neighborhood forever, and we can't go back. A big thing that wasn't mentioned either is that we're changing from commercial to multifamily. Commercial is quiet. There's nobody there at night. It's, you know, even when those buildings were active, there was no one there. So I just would ask you to really consider protecting the Memorial Park Triangle by voting no on this.
Thanks,
Thank
Vivian.
you.
Thanks, Vivian. Next is Greg Menzies and then Pat Eitz.
Well, I can't be as eloquent as my wife, but I'll do the best I can. I'm Greg Menzies. I live at 212 West Fremont Street and been a resident for over 50 years in Arlington Heights. And I've been living in the Hannah neighborhood for 47 years, and I was one of the founding members of Hannah way back in '78. One thing I wanted to let you know too is, I'm going to cut this back because we talked about a lot of this already, but we all benefit from all of the things that are downtown that we can walk through, like Arlington Al Fresco. We do a lot of the events that are going on. We have all of the things that happen in the city we can walk to, which is really a great thing for all of us. But one of the things that I'm most concerned about really is density and height of the building that we're talking about. And when you look at, we have 50 historic homes in the neighborhood right now with about 134 residents. This project will add 136 more units with 136 to 200 more residents in a small area, small 2.5 block area. It more than doubles the space, and it will change the character. I don't know what anybody else would think about. As good as we make the building, which you did a great job on redoing it, and one of the things that we didn't really get to talk about this whole project before it got well underway was the 2 points, which is the density and the appropriateness in the neighborhood. So I think no matter what you look at, it's going to be negatively impacting the people that are current residents in the neighborhood, and I think it's going to not be something that we can say is going to add value to our homes. So I think you look at the property, it's a valuable piece of property. It's not something we have to do today. Thanks, Scott, for mentioning that. It's not something that we're in dire straits because it's not being developed right now, but I think there's probably more appropriate things that can be done at this site. So that's what I have, and I thank you for hearing our concerns.
Right, thanks, Greg. Next is Pat Eitz and then Scott McKinley. Hi, Pat.
You've heard me before. I've lived in the neighborhood also for 47 years, and I live right across the street from Memorial Park. That is a dear part of our neighborhood. Excuse me for reading this, but I'm
That's
not
fine. No.
I'm not a public
You're
speaker.
fine.
The Eastman project has been tweaked by the contractor, and we're very grateful for that, for some of the changes. However, I oppose the current plan for the same reasons as I previously spoke about before. The density, fitting into the neighborhood, and the lack of green space around it to be provided for those people who are going to be moving into the neighborhood. These are questions we have struggled with. How will the high-rise fit in the Hannah neighborhood? How many stories are acceptable? How will it change the very character of the neighborhood? These are important questions to our community and ultimately to the entire village. During the process, it occurred to me that we are missing a bigger picture. This is not just about the Eastman project. Although the Eastman project is a perfect example of how I believe the village should not go about future planning. It seems to me that the process is a bit backwards. A vision of how planners want their village to look like should happen first, followed by a contractor's plan to fit into that vision. It's about planning what we want the village to look like, not just individual parcels. We are faced with a particular problem in the village of Arlington Heights with the current large tract of vacant land left from the racetrack, the vacancy of the racetrack. Whether or not the Bears will occupy the land, the occupants of that large tract will define the village for generations to come. The question is, what do the residents want our village and our neighborhoods to look like in the future? And that looms large in my mind. That is true for each and every neighborhood in our sprawling landscape. It is especially important now with regard to our current small and thriving downtown. Currently, the community atmosphere and cohesiveness have proved to be attractive to the residents and businesses. We don't have the luxury of timing. The village of Arlington Heights is faced with an imminent major change, likely in the very near future, and must adjust to the vision rapidly. I think this is a golden opportunity to rethink planning according to current theories of comprehensive planning. I encourage you to work with residents to plan for our village. Going forward, the vision of Arlington Heights should be integrated, inclusive, implementable, scalable, and include the vision of changes that we are about to embark upon. I suggest that the makeup of the community should be include genders, ages, races, income levels, educational levels, neighborhood representatives, along with village planners. I will end with this plea. I will end this with the plea that this project be put on hold until we have a plan that is suitable to the village of Arlington Heights, the neighbors, and the contractors. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Pat. Next is Scott McKinley, and then John Lewis.
There's no L in my name. It's McKinney.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi, my name is Scott McKinney. My wife Sarah and I moved to 203 West Fremont Street 11 years ago. I'd like to begin by saying that I echo the concerns of many of my neighbors here regarding the size, density, and insufficient setbacks of the proposed structure. I emailed my specific concerns to the trustees individually. Yes. I emailed my specific concerns to the trustees individually, and many of you responded. Thank you for taking the time to do that. I'd like to use my time here this evening to approach this development from a slightly different angle. The motto of the Village of Arlington Heights is, quote, "the city of good neighbors," unquote. I appreciate this motto for the ideal that it represents and also the way that it aligns with my real-world experience of living here. Throughout the various meetings relating to this development, my neighbors have been vocal about how much they value this neighborhood, how much they love living here. They've noted the character and the charm of the neighborhood and the benefits of being so close to the downtown area. To me, though, the biggest joy of living where we do is that it's an area full of good neighbors. It's an area full of people who live their lives together. We walk together and ride bikes together. We celebrate holidays together and gather for dinners together. We water each other's gardens and lend each other tools. We read books together and we go to the theater together. and we bond over the common struggles of owning older homes. These acts, and so many more that I could list if given the time, are the acts that make our neighborhood special. It's not the historic structures, it's the people, the good neighbors, and the community of care that has developed over the course of decades, long before my time. By contrast, proposing a 70-foot building with minimal setback directly across the street from a single-family home is not the act of a good neighbor. From my perspective, this is why we've reacted so strongly against this development. It conflicts directly with the culture and the community of care that hundreds of residents have worked so hard for nearly half a century to create. Regardless of the outcome of tonight's vote, I would urge Mr. Taylor and Mr. Citron to consider what it might mean to act as a good neighbor in the context of this development and in the context of future developments. What it might mean to prioritize people and communities over profit. And I would urge this board to look beyond what zoning might or might not allow and hold Mr. Taylor and Mr. Citron accountable to the village's own idealized standard of what it means to be a good neighbor. Thank you for your time, your thoughtfulness, and your consideration.
All right, thanks, Mr. McKinney. And next is John Lewis, and then Eileen Devine.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to address you. I'm John Lewis. I live at 406 West Fremont. I'm also on the HANA board, but I speak for myself tonight. I like that word up there, collaboration. I think it has been a good collaboration so far. The current version that we see of this development, I think most of us agree, is a big improvement from what we saw a year ago. The process seems to be working, although I would submit to you that tonight it's not yet complete. It's very close, but it's not quite complete. I think the preponderance of the residents behind me support the concept of residential here. That's not up for debate. That would be an improvement on this site. It's the right choice for this particular spot. It's the right choice for our neighborhood. Our neighborhood is a neighborhood of residents. As you probably heard and probably guessed, and some of you have shared there's concerns that persist about height and density. A 6-story building next to single-family homes it doesn't feel right? I mean, the staff report notwithstanding, it doesn't quite fit here. Just because you could do something doesn't mean that you should do something. This is the cradle of our community, as you all know. Putting a building of this height there, it just sticks out. It sets a precedent that I don't think that this board wants to establish in this particular part of the neighborhood or this particular part of our town. It's also inconsistent with the village comprehensive plan. I mean, we have single-family homes adjacent. Putting a 6-story building next to that it's not compatible with that. It's allowed per the zoning that exists, but it doesn't quite fit. It doesn't quite fit. I'd like to suggest, there's maybe some adjustments that can be made. I don't want to get into horse trading here, but if there's a way to sort of make this building at least look more similar to the other buildings that are multifamily nearby, 3 stories or so, that would work. Like, we're not saying that they need to take the whole thing down to 3 stories, but what if they could expand the setback a little bit more? The graphic that's shown up here, and again, I just speak for myself, the graphic shown up here, on that far north part of the 4th and 5th floors, there are 6 units. If those were to be eliminated, it would be 12 units out of the entire project. That's less than 10%. It also creates what looks like equivalent of a 3-story building on the north side, adjacent to the homes. The Sigwell project was mentioned. There's a similar buffer that's offered there that doesn't exist here. So something like that could be considered here. But there's other opinions on this, but I would encourage the board, I would encourage the developer, there's a little bit more work to do. The process has been working so far. Let's let it continue to a rightful completion. Thanks for your time.
All right, thanks, John. Next is Eileen Devine, and then Justin Zeeb.
Hello, my name is Eileen Devine. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
And I reside at 201 West Euclid. So I'm on the northern tip of the triangle. Euclid traffic. So I know all about that. I like to go into the history too of where we're at. History helps us all understand why we are here today. You can peek into my home. When I tell people I live in Arlington Heights, 3 houses from the Historical Society, they're impressed. They comment, what a beautiful area, one of my favorite places in Arlington. When we purchased our house, our almost 100-year-old Foursquare, it was referred to as the witch's haunted house. After World War II, my home was turned into a rooming house, then condemned by the village for sanitation reasons. Just imagine that. New owners bought it and turned it into a 2-flat. Finally, in 1986, my husband and I bought the big green blob with 5 roofs on it and no back door. We were told by 3 realtors and neighbors the zoning changed and now rezoned as a single-family residence, no longer a multifamily. Instead of a welcome greeting, my next-door neighbor mumbled, "Too many people lived in this house. Are you aware of the rezoning?" So, my story is not unique. Instead, it is a common thread of our neighborhood. Abandoned, foreclosed, boarded up, dilapidated homes, all put back together and restored by the homeowners at our expense. We were the developers in the 70s and 80s and 90s, and now. Collectively, we have invested millions in our area. This was a forgotten spot, I believe. Some zoning changed, while other areas like St. James were overlooked. We may not have a populated business zone on our side, but we are home to 3 glorious Arlington Heights gems: the library, the Historical Society, and Memorial Park. What the future holds. We understand why Compass Point wants to invest in our community. To quote Mr. Rogers, it's a beautiful place, our neighborhood. Please apply the same careful scrutiny with the Eastman project as the Village Board did years ago with the proposed 5-story building on Sigwald. After review and attention to the surrounding area, the village instead approved a complex of 3-story townhomes, a perfect buffer between a residential and business area. As Carrie Dwyer stated about the Sigwald project, it is my understanding that the comprehensive plan was developed to protect the residents at the risk of our homes depreciating in value by placing a building that is too large in density in proximity to single-family homes. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Eileen. Next is Justin Zeeb, and then Elena Coughlin.
Hi there, my name is Justin Zeb. I live at 121 West Fremont Street, directly behind John and Kara Asa, and on this drawing would be about where the margin is. So I've been proudly living at Fremont Street for the last 7 years. I grew up down in Southern Illinois, and I work downtown in the Loop in IT. And when I tell my coworkers that I live in Arlington Heights, we all know the responses when you tell people we live in Arlington Heights. Wow, great area, love the downtown, those restaurants are great. We know those things because they're true. Our village is awesome. We don't need to develop more right now. Another thing we always hear, the bears are coming, right? Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But a $6.3 billion organization bought property in our town. So what's that tell us? We have options. We don't need to say yes to the first guy that asks us to dance. So I think with those options, we need to really concern ourselves. Do we need to build or allow a structure that's 76 feet tall next to a single-family home, and one that I can see from where I drink my coffee in the morning? That matters to me, and I know that's specifically my problem. Another thing, if we allow another apartment building to be built in Arlington Heights, it looks great. Joe, I really believe you when you say, Milo, I actually believe you. I know you like doing this. But what's this going to look like in 25 years? I still plan on owning my home, and apartment buildings tend to age poorly. And I'm concerned that while, yes, it'll be luxury apartments now, what's it going to be in 25 years? Every historical home we've seen that has a huge structure behind it loses a little bit of luster, and this is moving on me. And I think we really need to concern ourselves on, do we want to build another apartment building in a historical neighborhood? Thanks.
All right, thanks, Justin. Next is Elena, and then Sheila Cruz.
I'm Elena Coughlin. This is Will. We live at 121 West Fremont. I've been a resident of Arlington Heights for 33 years, my entire life. I attended St. James and Prospect High School, and I currently teach kindergarten in the area. My 754 square foot, 104-year-old home is directly impacted by this development. Starting out, thank you to the trustees for serving our village and community. We appreciate the trustees were able to take time out of their day to visit the site and the location of this proposed building. For those of you who are not, we urge you to go and stand on St. James Street, look south, and consider the magnitude of what is being proposed here. A 6-story, 76-foot tall building, 0 feet from the AT&T building and just 10 feet back from the sidewalk. That fills nearly the entire lot. When you are there, it really is startling. This development will tower over our neighborhood and will have a direct line of sight into my backyard. My neighbors and I are here tonight to ask you to advocate on our behalf as the people who will be living next to this intense development as quoted by a commissioner during the Plan Commission meeting. The Arlington Heights Comprehensive Plan states developments should take into consideration the character of the existing neighborhood and the relationship to adjacent homes. When it comes to this development, it's no doubt that this is a fish out of water in our cute and quaint neighborhood. How you can develop this space and how you should are two very different things. While we thank Joe Taylor for the changes that he's made on the design after years of discussion, we ask the board to consider what more can be done so this proposed development is less of an encroachment on the adjacent neighborhood. Please consider fewer units on the north side to give us this a more pronounced step down rather than it being a cliff. The current step down on the north side is an improvement over the original proposal, but it's tiny in context of the full building profile. The contrast between this building in comparison to the ASA residence and the other single-story homes is startling. Please consider a larger step back to help us buffer what will otherwise be an enormous structure next to single-family homes. The current setback compared to the ASA residence is concerning. The density and size in general is very concerning. Even at a minimum of just 1 resident per unit, with 136 units, we are already doubling the population of the adjacent neighborhood. Other mid-rises adjacent to single-family homes seem to have far less units. Mr. Taylor and Compass Point have a job to do, and the village and the neighborhood have a job to do. It is not our job to make a profit for Compass Point, but to protect what we have. Mr. Taylor and Compass Point will no doubt argue that they've done what they've done at previous meetings, that they can't change any of this. We urge the board to help us make this development better. We ask for your expertise to guide what should exist in this space, something that complements the adjacent neighborhood rather than detracting from it. If changes are not able to be made to this current plan, I encourage you to vote no and support a development that would be a better fit for the essential character of our neighborhood and village. This area does not need to be developed right now. We ask you to look beyond the zoning data that indicates this project fits and consider this from a human perspective. The residents who have created this gem of a neighborhood shouldn't be deprioritized in favor of an out-of-town developer seeking maximum return on investment. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Elena. Last is Sheila Cruz, but Sheila, did you want to talk about this development or the inclusionary housing? You want to talk about this? I see you got affordable housing on here, but
Yeah,
related to this
Yeah,
project.
it kind of rolls into it. So.
Okay, go ahead.
So thank you. I grew up in the Hannah District, and I am now a South Sider. And I just had some comments tonight about the community survey and how it relates to the Hannah District. The community survey that was circulated to 2,800 randomly selected households and then made available to anyone who drew 523 people to respond. Out of the 31,000 households in Arlington Heights, 523 people actually took the survey. But these respondents are worthy. The majority who answered the survey are over the age of 55. A whopping 68% are over the age of 55. Now, these 68% really like Arlington Heights, but sadly 40% do not see themselves living here in the next 5 years. And that's because they are or will be, empty nesters or looking at retirement. Their income, for the vast majority, will be Social Security and savings. And despite their desire to stay in Arlington Heights, they know they will not be able to qualify for affordable housing options that the condensed housing builders will offer. These folks know those few units that will be termed affordable are based on a resident meeting federal poverty guidelines, not the resident who's lived here 30-plus years and has paid off their home. These 68% want to downsize their home and buy a condo or rent an apartment, but their only income is Social Security or savings, and they know they can't afford to live in a new place with the price tag that the builders exact. Maybe they have a savings from selling their house, but that money was going to be used to live on, to buy health care and groceries and entertainment, because Arlington Heights has a lot to offer, and these 68% would certainly be supporting the local establishments, just as they always did for the past 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 more years. They are not looking for government subsidies, just a nice, smaller home in the town that they raised their families in, the town their friends and associates live in, the town they, the 68%, cared enough about to answer your survey. And to last little notice here, as I was sitting in the back of the room, I did notice this gentleman's shoes. And your shoes are cool. I don't know who makes them. They're cool, they're old-fashioned. They would fit better in the Eastman neighborhood than the design that you have proposed tonight. Thank you.
All right, I have no other blue cards. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to address the board on this? Please come forward. The lady in the green, ma'am. And just give us your name if you would. And
Hi, my name is Georgine LeBeau, and I actually live in Hannah, but I live on Evergreen by North Park. And Rich Reddick and I, my partner, are here to support the Hannah district. We've been in the community for almost 40 years. I meant to send you the letter, and I didn't get a chance to, so I don't speak very well all the time, so he's going to read the letter for me. Thank you.
I have an opinion about the swimming pool being open air. I think it should be indoors. My reason, this is a rental building. There will be drinking and loud music. There is no pride of ownership. Noise from that outdoor venue will go echoing down St. James and through the Hannah historical neighborhood. There will be no way to quiet it down unless the police are called. It doesn't matter what studies have been done for parking in the area. There will be no convenient parking spaces available on Eastman. There are very few spots. What is there usually gets filled up very quickly with people either going to Javier's or in town. People visiting the apartment building will revert to St. James, filling the street as a guest parking area. In addition, there will be no parking spaces for any restaurant being put in this residential building. Since my awareness of this project, I have driven throughout Arlington Heights and other surrounding communities. I have yet to see anywhere there are houses in a row with a large building newly built along the front side of the homes. I call this the Great Wall of Eastman. I remember the years ago, the homes on St. James were considered undesirable and thought of as teardowns. It seems during those years, somehow the zoning was changed on the Eastman property back to R6. When the buildings were zoned business, it has been quiet in the evenings and quiet on the weekends. I doubt that this will be the case if this building exists. During the late 90s and early 2000s, in came a new group of homeowners. They have poured money and their hearts into this once undesirable block. A great new life for St. James, I noticed, but who in the village noticed and was paying attention to keeping this a low-density neighborhood. Please note the townhouses built behind the 44 South Vale building and how they are. They are facing single-family houses. Are we all too late to help these young tax-paying families from facing renters of the wall? In their busy lives, it's difficult for these homeowners to rehab their houses, raise their families by two working parents, and pay attention to all the zoning in the village. I know because I have been one of them. I have been in the village since 1966. I have always seen it as a family-friendly village where people work hard and have pride of ownership. If this project passes, I blame our village for not paying attention to the zoning on this property and not lowering the height and density that is being proposed today. Thank you for listening.
All right, thank you both. All right, is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to address the board on this agenda item? All right, you'll get your chance. Okay. Go ahead. Art, come on forward. Art, you just got to give us your full name.
My name is Art Ellingson. I live at 610 South Arlington Heights Road. And I filled out a card to speak at the first thing that was on the agenda. And my name was not called.
We'll give you an opportunity to address that after we finish this. I did ask if there was anyone that wanted to.
I do want to speak on this issue.
Okay, go ahead and speak on this issue.
But the people who lived across my backyard off to the angle were a couple of young guys several years ago when I was first here. I moved here the day everyone remembers, I moved in the day the racetrack burned down. Moved from a 2-bedroom condo in Barrington, drove past the racetrack 10 times that day, carrying all the stuff we wouldn't trust the movers to move. But that's the day we moved. We came in here with a 22-month-old baby, and we had a couple of single guys living behind us, 2 houses over, who had loud parties almost every Friday and Saturday night. I can't tell you how many times the first 5 years I was here I had to call the police to get them to quiet down. And that was in a single-family house, but a couple of young singles living there. I feel for the residents of this area who are not fond of this changing their neighborhood, are not fond of this swimming pool being there. I worked in the Navy as a lifeguard. I know the pools get to be loud, although the pool I was lifeguard at usually was an indoor pool. But when I was working as a lifeguard over in the residential housing project of Great Lakes, those evenings were loud. Now, we had lots of open space. It wasn't a problem then, but I know the swimming pools can be loud because I've worked there. So I feel for these families, and I urge you to not approve the project as currently presented. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Art. Anyone else in the audience? All right, Mr. Ecklaus.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to make a couple of points. The board is given broad authority under planned unit developments to approve these items or not approve them. But, I think one of the things that staff advocates for is, good zoning code and good development comes from predictability. And, in this particular case, the only variations that are being sought are whether or not the drive aisle should be a little bit different, whether there should be some tandem spaces, and whether or not there should be a building allowed in this district that doesn't have commercial across the entire first floor. Otherwise, this project is being proposed within our code, within the B5 mixed-use district. And it's obviously a buffer district, and the buffer areas are always the ones that are harder because it's kind of one area or another. And I'm not suggesting which way the board should vote. I mean, you have to balance a variety of factors. But one thing I do want to say is that I think it's only fair that if board members don't want to see something like this happen, we really owe it to people who are looking to invest in this project to tell them, what would you like to see? Because I think what they've done is basically checks almost all of the boxes of what we have written in our code. And properties are purchased and invested in based on what is written in our code. And I just do want to point that out. We had a very similar conversation. I think distinctions were drawn with the Sigwalt apartment project prior to Sigwalt 16. And I think this is a very similar conversation. I think I made very similar comments. The other thing I was going to point out, because it's been brought up a couple of times, is the distinction between rental and condo developments. Under the zoning code, under land use, there is no distinction between multifamily, owned and multifamily rented. And so that's not something that generally is factored in these decisions. I can tell you that currently, and Charles can vouch for me on this, no one is building condos in our market. It's not something that you can't get a loan for it because it's not a popular product that's being sold right now. People are much more gravitating for a variety of reasons, higher interest rates, the economy and so forth, are much more gravitating towards rental right now. That's just what you're seeing built. And when you talk to our counterparts in other towns, that's all anyone is building right now. There does seem to be very much a demand for rental right now. Things have changed from where they were many years ago. And I just do want to point that out. That could change. Rental units could change into condos like we saw years ago, and condos could be changing to rental. But I wanted to make that distinction. I just want to make those points to kind of frame up the discussion from our perspective.
Well, thanks, Mr. Reckloff. And I do appreciate those comments, and it kind of leads into mine. I do believe, as you do, that this is an opportunity for us to develop a area that is really asking for redevelopment. You're looking right now at vacant office space, which if you're looking for something to become dilapidated, that's more likely to become dilapidated than a brand new, very high quality apartment complex. And so, I've been on this board for about 32 years now. I've seen lots of these discussions where people are concerned about the potential adverse impact on their adjacent neighborhood. And I can't remember any situation over the course of those 30 plus years where their concerns have come to fruition. I've never seen an adverse impact on an adjacent neighborhood in any of these developments. And so, I do appreciate your voicing these concerns, and we do have to be mindful of them. But I just don't see how this very high quality development adjacent to your neighborhood, not in your neighborhood, is going to adversely impact the quality of your life or the essential character of your neighborhood. Now, I do struggle with individuals like Karen Asa and her family right across the street from the redevelopment, and others who are looking directly at the property. But it's really very, very few homes, probably less 5 or so, that are going to be actually seeing this high structure across the street from them. And so that's where I struggle with is, do I say yes to something that's going to directly impact Karen Asa and those families right across the street? But I sincerely believe, based on my experience, that this very high quality development is not going to have an adverse impact. Mr. McKinney talked about your neighborhood getting together for vacations and doing other things together. This is not going to have any impact whatsoever on that. I think these people are going to be good neighbors. They've talked about how they're going to be good neighbors with respect to management of the people turning out of the building and how they're going to manage the noise coming out of the pool area. And I believe that they can do that, and the village will stand behind them to make sure that those regulations are met. And so those are just some of my points. Again, I do think, and the Plan Commission voted unanimously in favor of it, so did the Design Commission. And I take those, the decisions of those bodies to heart. So with that, I'll turn it over to the board for their comments. Trustee LaBedz.
Thank you, Mayor Hayes. I didn't start out earlier saying thank you, but I do want to thank actually everybody that's been involved with this, the developer for all the hard work, the time, the money that's involved in making these kinds of changes. That is, as Mayor Hayes said, very unusual that a developer will listen and take to heart comments and try to address the concerns. I appreciate the staff and all the time that was spent on this, because I know it's a lot of time, and I appreciate your comments, Mr. Reckloff. And I especially appreciate all the residents who contacted us. I tried to acknowledge every email that I received and every conversation that I had. I have wrestled with this project from the day I found out it was going to start its way through the process, because it is literally in my backyard, and I don't want to be a NIMBY. And so I have gone back and forth, and I have listened. But I agree with Trustee Tinaglia. I just don't think it fits. And the other thing that really is a concern of mine is the whole block is B5. This is one project. Let's say the bank, even though it recently remodeled, there's nothing to prevent a similarly sized or bigger building to go up there. And it's a rather enclosed area. It will be very difficult to absorb that kind of density. And so that is really a big concern of mine as I try to look down the road into the future. And I think that is something that I have to think of as a board member. I have been on the Plan Commission, so I know what the Plan Commission is tasked with, and that is zoning. And yes, this does meet the zoning, and the variations are minimal, even though there are a lot of actually the conditions were put on to try to make the design more palatable. But I just am not there with this, and therefore I cannot support this project.
All right. Who else? Trustee Grasse.
Thank you. I too have wrestled with this. I want to be supportive of new development. I must add, I am not as concerned with the density for some of the reasons mentioned before, as far as the environmental and fiscal benefits that it brings. I still struggle truly with, does this fit in? And I have seen the progress that has been made so far already in some of these changes. And what I am seeing is, yes, it is that buffer. It's that line that really is defining this for me, as far as we've come so far. And I really hope that there can be a project that can work. But I feel that there needs to be more of a transition for this buffer for me to fully support this project at this time.
Trustee Tinaglia.
Thanks, Mayor Hayes. Well, I remember the Sigwald 16 project pretty well, and I think it went through at least a couple of different ownerships, not just iterations, because while there may not have been an enormous amount of zoning variations that were requested, it just didn't fit. And now what we have there is I think those 16 units sold immediately. I don't think there was one unit that sat around on the inventory more than a couple of months before that whole thing sold out. I'm not in a position to tell anybody what to do or how to do it, but I would argue that nobody in this room knows this business and how this process works better than I do. I've been through this way, way, way too many times in those chairs, in these chairs, design commission. I'm not a developer. I don't have any investment on any of these projects. This project, of course, not either. But I understand the process, and I understand the heartburn that these folks are going through. It's very, very difficult. And I know how hard Charles's department works to try and make these things work. This is a massive challenge for every project that comes through here. But in time, the right project, the right proposal usually shows its face and gets approved. And I don't think this one's that far away. I really don't. I think with a little bit of the advice that you've heard from all of us up here and from all the folks in the room, I think that you're not that far away. And I'm not telling you have to go back to the drawing board and redo it. I'm not telling you to spend more money. I'm just suggesting that where we're at right now,
I can't get my arms around it for those reasons. It's not about zoning. It's not about B5. It is about B5 being across from R3. And I don't think this works the way it is right now. That's just my humble opinion on it.
All right, anybody else? All right, Mr. Passman, do we have a motion?
Is it possible for me to take like 7 statements?
Yeah, please.
Just real briefly, and I appreciate it. First of all, I appreciate all the comments that the board has made. It is truly, you don't have to believe this, but it is truly one of the reasons we want to build in Arlington Heights, because you care, and you have good developments and everything else. And I actually do appreciate what the neighbors are saying, but I have to unfortunately pull my lawyer hat on, which I do with much hesitancy, because that's not how these decisions get made. But I have to do it, because my client, I can see where this is going, and if nothing else, I have to point out a couple of things to you. First of all, what, and Mr. Recklos said this, what more would you have us do? I'm just going to leave that out there. I don't expect an answer right now. But what more would you have us do? The second word I'm going to use came from them, and that's accountability. And again, you said this too. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you have a comprehensive plan. You have a zoning ordinance. You have building codes. You have this whole panoply of things that we have to meet. Now, granted, when we came in the first time, we were asking for more. We were asking for a density variation. Our height was higher and everything else. We're not. We meet the code, period. Other than adding tandem parking spaces, which I doubt people really have a problem with because it's more, not less. So at what point do we as developers say, this is a $66 million project that was now redesigned to meet 99% of the standards, 89, whatever number that is, of the standards that this board has put into place? You weren't asleep at the wheel. I would be upset when people said you may have been a little asleep at the wheel and you didn't address this or anything else. There's a couple of other things. And again, I'm being very picky here, and I'm doing it at great peril to myself. But we are not adjacent to Hannah. We're across the street. Anybody can look at the case law and said, streets are dividing lines. We are not in the neighborhood. They are dividing lines. Adjacent means next to. We're not next to. We had a project in another town down the train tracks. That one was next to the residential. That was literally right next to the residential. I'm not going to tell you the outcome because I'm not asking or suggesting that you should follow what another town does, but that was adjacent. This is not adjacent. This is across the street. Many of the people who spoke in this room, will they see the building? Absolutely correct. They will see the building. But we're not adjacent to them. They're back into the development. So at what point do you draw the line? Where is that line as you debate this in terms of voting or not voting? I appreciate you digging in terms of what the setbacks are along St. James. We're farther away than what people said we were. If you listen to what is being said, it's all too easy to say we're adjacent, it's too big, it won't fit. Why? Why doesn't this fit? We're not equal to the allowable density, we're less than the allowable density. That's what we have here. We bought the property knowing what that density is. We bought the property knowing how tall you could build here. Again, we meet those standards. So at what point, and again, this is not a threat, please, I do not do that. I really do not do that. But that's what happens is when we go in, when a developer, again, is what was said, is you rely upon the rules that are here. It's been a long time since I got a unanimous vote from everybody. I know I'm not going to get that tonight. But it has been a long time that I've gotten a unanimous vote. Some misstatements were made. I mean, we can throw it up, but there's no reason to really do it, is we are not casting a shadow over the whole neighborhood, period. We had people say, no, you're wrong, it casts a shadow, whatever. Wrong. We do not do that. We can show you the drawings. It's in your packets. It's in the material that we have. We were able to do that. So ultimately, and I'm going to stop now, is we are not adjacent. That means next to. That's the definition. I looked it up in a dictionary before I stood up here. There is an accountability. Now, I'm not saying we're going down any kind of road like that, but there is an accountability. How do developers invest in your town if they don't know ultimately they can work something out? Now, what I'm hearing is, well, you're close. We don't know what close means. We've been very honest in terms of you shrink that north end onto St. James, we lose parking. If we lose parking, Charles's office, I apologize for pointing you guys out, but you're there. If we lose parking, we're going to lose, even more units. But we are in B5. Had this board had that issue, you could have changed this from B5 to something else at the same time you changed it across the street. It doesn't take a petition from the property owner. This board could have done that themselves if they were that worried about it. So with that, I will leave you with, what would you have us do? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Let me just address the adjacency issue. I said that, but there's a difference between a legal definition and the practical definition. And I admit that you are not in the Hannah neighborhood. That's clear to me. And I don't think it's going to have any adverse impact on that neighborhood. But you are adjacent. You're next to, whether you're across the street or next to it. So that's just what I just wanted to add that. Now, Mr. Reckless and then Mr. Passman, I just want to address where we go from here in terms of what the developer's options are. We haven't heard from all members of the board, so I don't know what the will of the board is at this point. We've heard from some.
I think if, there's a couple of thoughts, and Mr. Passman can jump in as well. I would suggest that if the board believes that we're very close, that it's advisable, rather than to deny, to vote this down, to give the applicant some direction and revisit this in in a month or in a certain period of time, and deal with it that way. That's what Mr. Passman and I were conferring on, and we think that that's probably legally advisable based on how the conversation has played out.
Yeah, well,
we would wholeheartedly agree with that. That's why I jumped up here.
Okay.
We would wholeheartedly agree with that. I guess we try. I mean, where this goes, I cannot tell you, but I guess we try. We have too much into this deal.
If I can just add to that, Mayor, I do think, again, I'm not trying to put an idea in anyone's head, but unless it's the will of a majority of the board that any version of this development is deemed to not meet our standards, then it may make sense to explore whether and to what extent the current plans can be further revised to address some of the concerns that have been raised tonight. It's not normally, and I know Mr. Citron knows this, it's not normally the place of the board to start telling developers what they should change, because that's our job is to respond to an application and advise whether it meets the standards or not. And ultimately, that's your vote as a collective. But certainly, if there are items that each of you individually thinks might be relevant to how you would vote when the time comes to vote, substantively to vote, I should say, then that's something that certainly staff and our office would take into advisement as we work with the developer. Again, if this is the approach you choose to take. But keeping in mind that if the board does choose to vote on this plan tonight and it is denied, the developer can still come back with a different proposal, but they'd have to go all the way back through the process, going back through planning commission, design commission, and the like, just under our code. That's the next step if there is a denial vote. And again, I'm not saying that to put my thumb on the scale. I just want you to be aware of that. If there's room to change this, the time is probably to allow staff with whatever additional feedback to work that through with the developer and come back, whether it's 2, 4, or some other time. 2, 4 weeks.
Right. Trustee Tinaglia.
Just to ask a quick question. Hart, would it be beneficial for this petitioner to ask for some sort of a pause instead of a vote? I mean, is that a legit request?
That's effectively what we're
asking. I think what I'm hearing
for.
Mr. Citron saying is seeking a continuance of this matter.
That is exactly what
and
we're
we don't have to set a specific date on it. We can. The public hearing process is over, so we're not bound by that. But if I'm hearing that.
Art, you're absolutely 100%.
Never said that about me before, so I'll take it.
How would the neighborhood, if there's no postings and things like that, how would the neighborhood be made aware of further meetings?
We have on our website a project page for this, and many of the residents have signed up. And once we know there's a date, like for tonight, there was a blast that went out to anyone that had signed up to receive information on the project. So we'll do the same thing.
Excellent.
All right, Trustee Shirley.
So what's a good way to condense the board's issues in some kind of summary? I mean, if we all sit up here and talk, each one, that's not giving them any clear direction. So what's a way for this thing to kind of move forward? Is it staff putting together based on tonight's discussion, like, height, density? I'm just trying to figure out what happens next, and maybe we don't decide tonight, but how do we move it forward from just 9 people talking to here's what the majority of the board thinks should be modified?
Go ahead, Mr. Eklund.
I was going to say, I mean, I think we can give that. I think I agree with you, Trustee Schiller. We don't have to decide that definitively tonight, but I think that we've done this a lot of times before on bigger projects where, staff can come up with some things based on what we've heard, run that by the board. We can talk to you, individually to make sure that we take the time to really understand where each one of you, where your issues are, and then work with the developer to, come back. And then obviously any decision that's going to be made is going to be made in an open session like this, where opportunities for input and all of that. But I would suggest that this moment might call for a little bit more, a deeper refinement based on some back and forth, if that's agreeable to the board.
Yeah, that's fine. Trustee Grasse.
How would that motion go
table.
then? I would be willing to table it or pause it to allow for continued communication. I believe that you heard the concerns earlier and adjusted, and I think that might be a good way for us to return that. How would that motion be? Or
I would say when it's I'll try to answer both Trustee Shirley's question and your question, Trustee Grasse, and one I agree with what the manager said. Certainly, if there are additional items that the board wants to kind of put out there for us, the developer, to consider as we work together, and I think now would be the time for that. We don't need to figure out whether, I think we'll have some sense if someone has an idea that it's only one trustee's idea, or if it's something we see a lot of nodding heads. And it's unofficial, right? Just trying to give us a flavor for it. Whether we're at that point now or it's in just a few minutes, the appropriate motion, I think, if you're in agreement, would be just a motion to continue this matter to a future board date to give the developer and the staff opportunities to work through the comments and issues raised tonight. It can be as simple as that. And then we will, at an appropriate time, bring this back on an agenda, as staff has said, alert everybody who has requested notice about when it's coming back, obviously with ample time, so that those interested neighbors will have the opportunity to observe, vet, and then come prepared to share concerns about whatever may come if it's different, and thoughts on that. That's my recommendation.
All right, Trustee Schwingbeck.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to make a comment. I certainly respect everything I heard from the residents tonight, and I certainly respect all the comments that I've heard from my fellow trustees. Just a quick question. Did you folks purchase this property?
Yes.
I think the thing that we have going on here, and I'm all in agreement, Mayor, that when somebody comes in and buys property in our town, whether it's a small piece of property that is a single-family home or a piece of property like this, we've looked at a lot of projects on this board before where petitioners come to us and there's 15 or 20 exceptions that they're trying to take. And we're talking through all those exceptions and trying to figure out, where the project moves forward. I agree. You guys have come to us with virtually nothing. You've met all of our codes, zoning, building codes, if we start saying no to things like this, we're going to have a hard time with people coming to this town. So that's kind of where I stand. If you would have brought us a project that had 15 things that you wanted variances for, would have been a totally different situation.
We pulled the plug on that project.
But if it starts, obviously getting around that, here a petitioner or several petitioners, or imagine buying a small piece of property and you want to build a home and there's no variances, but people start screaming and yelling, it's going to get around and we're going to have a problem with people coming to this town. So I certainly respect the fact that we might pause this and give you an opportunity to think about it, but we've got a project here that has basically met all of our requirements, and I would have been in favor of it tonight.
And I would have been in favor of it as well. So just for the record, Trustee Dunnington.
I do also agree with Trustee Schwingbeck. I like that this helps with affordability and sustainability in Arlington Heights, and so I am in agreement as well.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments from the board? Trustee Bertucci.
If you are looking for a little peek at where everybody's at. So I would not vote for the project tonight as it is. I don't see why there couldn't be a reason why the setback can't go back and right from the first floor, so to speak, the 20 feet. I can't see why we can't do something with that northwest corner to make it attractive for, I don't care if it was one house or two houses or 10 houses that were directly across the street. I care about every resident, and I'm not going to be the callous one to say, oh, well, it's just the one resident or this or that. So there's got to be a way for you guys to still be able to have a nice development, make the money that needs to be made. I'm an entrepreneur myself. I'm not the type of person that's against opportunity. I'm a self-employed for 40 years, but I'm also very sensitive to my clients, and I think in some ways you have to be sensitive to the neighborhood.
We agree.
And if there's got to be a way you could work something out with the density and particularly the setback, I think you can get away with the height of it if you do the setbacks the right way. So
thank you.
Trustee Baldino.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Trustee Schwingbeck, for your comments. The fact that you're not asking for a laundry list of variations was why this was such a difficult decision for me. And the fact that there are 23 different conditions on this petition is a testament to how you're trying to reassure the village and the residents that you're trying to be a good neighbor. That's why it was such a difficult decision. I tend to disagree with Trustee Bertucci, though. I don't have a problem with the footprint of the building. And I'm falling back on the discussion we had on the Sigwald 16. The original project came back, it was 5 stories, and the whole discussion centered around the transition, what we've been calling tonight the buffer zone. And I'm sorry if I'm not speaking into the mic. Because we're looking at Arlington 425 that's 10, 11 stories tall, and then right next door to a residential neighborhood. And so that was the whole discussion. There needs to be a transition. And like I said, I don't have a problem with the footprint, because we talked about how you're 30 feet back from the street on the setback. But it's a transition. And Trustee Tinaglia hit the nail right on the head when he said, if we allow this project to go in, what happens when the bank closes and there's another 5-story building? And what happens if AT&T does move out of there? And so now we're talking about the Great Wall of Eastman that was talked about before. So that's my concern. And I've been looking for a reason to say yes. And I'm just not quite there with, along with some of my fellow trustees. You're so close, and I so much appreciate the effort and the expense that you put into the plans that you brought before us tonight. I'm just not quite there.
Thank you.
Mayor.
All right, is there a motion? Trustee Grasse.
I'll attempt one. I move to continue this development conversation,
Yeah, this, just this agenda item, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
To a date uncertain, based on conversations with the developer and village staff. Right?
Second.
All right, motion by Trustee Grasse, second by Trustee Baldino. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All
Thank
right.
you very much. We hope to be back
Thank
shortly.
you. All right, thank you all for joining us. I'm going to give you an opportunity to leave the room. We do have some other agenda items. Right, if I could ask you to leave the room now so we could move on with the agenda. Thank you. First item we're going to take up is the removed item from the consent agenda, Legal A, which was the amendment to the inclusionary housing ordinance. Mr. Ecklaus, or Mr. Passman?
Mr. Perkins is going
Okay.
to shepherd this one as well.
Okay, so in 2020, the village board approved the inclusionary housing ordinance after a very lengthy series of committee of the whole meetings and research. And there were two provisions in the ordinance. One that applies the ordinance to all new developments that result in new single-family dwelling units, one or two family. And when the board approved the final version of the ordinance on July 20th, 2020, there was a section that talked about the linkage fee and that it were applied to all new single-family dwelling units and units built in place of existing ones, so tear-downs. The board talked about not applying it to additions, but to tear-downs and new single-family homes. Then I don't know what happened. The ordinance somehow, when it got on the board agenda, it got changed. I couldn't tell you who or how it happened. And two words were omitted, the words "and units," even though the section that talks about the covered projects remained the same. So since 2020, we've been applying the ordinance to new single-family homes and tear-downs only, not additions. So in 2020, fees were collected, linkage fees from 14 homes. In 2021, 28 homes, 2022, 24 homes, so far in 2023, 14 homes. It then came to our attention that, you could read it a different way. So we're looking to get that ordinance corrected and then to continue implementing it as we have been. It's also described in the guidelines that we publish every year, and the linkage fee does increase in accordance with the CPI, as do the other fees in that ordinance. So I'll be happy to answer any other questions.
All right. Mr. Moons, you asked that this be removed, so the floor is yours for 3 minutes.
Got kind of crowded up here tonight. Thank you, President Hayes. I appreciate it. I do agree with the staff here that what was recommended to be adopted on July 20th of 2020 was not the same version that was approved in the consent agenda on August 3rd of 2020. But however, the proposed amendment tonight, as it's shown in bold-faced in the attachment, should be stated, I think, as to amend by inserting "and units" after "dwelling units." Currently, the proposed amendment seems to be inserting "units and" after "dwelling." And so I think you need to look at that very carefully, that gets amended as what Mr. Perkins talked about. It's making sure that it's inserted and units after dwelling units rather than units and after dwelling, and it's bold-faced that way. But also, I'd like to remind the board that on July 20th of 2020 board meeting, most of the trustees agreed that the inclusionary housing ordinance is just a starting point, and it's subject to change. So I'd ask the board to look for more revisions to improve the housing ordinance. For example, increasing the embarrassingly low minimum of 5% inclusionary units that would have gone into place tonight if this project would have approved. That is embarrassingly low to other affordable housing projects, and to re-include senior residential communities under covered development projects. Thank you, President.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Passman or Mr. Perkins, did you understand what Mr.
I do. I appreciate it. I think the ultimate, we're comfortable that the document in your packet does reflect the intent from 2020 and would have the effect stated by Mr. Perkins to get this ordinance where it was supposed to be.
Okay.
It reads the same whether you make it the change as written or the change that Mr. Muins had suggested.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, any questions or comments from the board? Is there a motion to approve
I move to approve
the amendment?
the amendment.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by trustee Grasse, second by trustee Schwingbeck. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Trustee Grasse?
Yes.
Trustee Schwingbeck?
Yes.
Trustee Dunnington?
Yes.
Trustee Bertucci?
Yes.
Trustee LaBedz?
Yes.
Trustee Baldino?
Yes.
Trustee Tinaglia?
Yes.
Trustee Shirley?
Yes.
President Hayes?
Yes. All right, we move on then to the report of the village manager, Mr. Ecklaus.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll try to be brief here. As you all know, the village set out a while back to update the village's Discover Arlington marketing campaign, where we market the village as a place to live, visit, and do business. As part of that effort, we also sought to consolidate the some 7 or so organizational logos that the village had been using over the years for various purposes. And not only was this confusing, but a number of the logos were difficult to print or see in various formats, making them unsuitable for digital use. We had a couple of board meetings over the past year or so with the village's branding consultant, Springboard, to go over concepts for the new marketing campaign and consolidated logo. The consultant conducted focus groups with various stakeholders to determine what it was that folks liked about Arlington Heights and what we wanted to stress. They used this feedback to put together concepts for the village board to discuss. And through that process, we learned that out of the concepts outlined, the village board on the whole preferred the Take It to the Heights marketing campaign concept to replace our old Discover Arlington campaign. As part of the work the consultant did, they developed a number of possible uses for the catchphrases and imagery. However, the board was unable to gain consensus on a logo that worked for both the Take It to the Heights marketing campaign and for use as a general organizational logo. Since that discussion a few months back, staff has been working on the issue and talking to individual trustees to better understand their concerns and views of the various concepts. In the end, what we've grown to understand is that trustees are not looking for as dramatic of a change in the organizational logo, and that the logo used by the marketing campaign does not have to be identical, but merely complementary to any organizational logo that we use. And so therefore, staff developed a more subtle refresh of our existing logo into a single organizational logo that works better in a digital format. We also worked with Springboard on a refinement of the new Take It to the Heights campaign, including an updated separate logo for that campaign. All of this was done taking into account the feedback and stated preferences of the trustees, but it'll be the first time that we'll be showing these concepts publicly. So without further ado, we'd like to show our work. What we have here is the staff-developed refresh of our organizational logo. You'll notice that the horse head is gone, but otherwise it is very familiar. It's a brighter, cleaner version of the village seal-like logo we've used in recent years. It uses the same color palette that we've used before, so it's very familiar. The addition of the established year of our incorporation year celebrates the village's history, and again, the village logo is easy to read and prints clearly. One of the other things that we talked about was our slogan of being the city of good neighbors, which always struck many of you as awkward because we're not a city, we're a village. And per the suggestion of the board, we've updated it to reflect the village of good neighbors and replaced the old logo with the new logo on a flag concept. this would be used on the village's flag, this concept. For marketing and tagline, we would be transferring from the Arlington Heights Always Discover More logo to the Arlington Heights Take It to the Heights logo. What these things represent, there's 3 avenues that represent our residents, visitors, and business owners. They also represent the streets, parks, recreation, and entertainment of the district. The first 2 avenues serve to form a subtle A, while the second 2 create a subtle H. There's also an upward trajectory of growth and spirit as the avenues rise up and ascend to project the possibilities of living and opening a business in Arlington Heights. These colors are the same colors as we have on the organizational logo, so they kind of interact with one another. And you know what, again, this logo and tagline would identify the village's brand and to support our local businesses, to draw awareness of our quality of life and amenities, and to showcase the village as a good place to do business. These are some examples of what was put together by Springboard as part of the overall marketing campaign that we're developing, how you can use the To the Heights phrase in different ways to celebrate and highlight different aspects of life and entertainment in our community. So what we would be doing is the village organizational logo would be used to represent the village government. So letterhead, vehicle doors, flyers, the website, social media, email signatures. The marketing and tagline logo would be used on the new Take It to the Heights website, our Take It to the Heights Facebook page, which would replace our Discover page, radio advertisements, events, flyers, banners, etc. We're promoting kind of the entertainment and tourism aspect of the town. We still have a very limited use village seal that's embossed on documents, that's stamped by the village clerk. This would, we saw no reason to really change the village seal because it's used in a very limited legalistic basis. In terms of the timeline that we're suggesting is we would begin using the Take It to the Heights campaign almost immediately for this holiday season's promotions. It would be unveiled. The village logo, we want to be a little bit more conscious of that. We want to eliminate the number of competing logos that we have. And so we want to take till about March to have a big splash where we'll be updating our flag social media website, following all of the style guide that's being developed by staff and the consultant kind of all at once. So then you'd have an organizational shift at that time. Certain things would happen through attrition, like vehicle painting and that kind of stuff we do as pieces of equipment retired. So that's the concept. And like I said, we've discussed this and gotten feedback from you all individually, but it's the first time we've seen the light of day. And all we'd be looking for tonight is a motion, which I think is before you, to direct staff to kind of move forward in this direction if the board is amenable to that.
Okay, well, thanks, Randy. I do like both the logo and the tagline, and I think they really represent where the village is at and should be going. And so thank you for your efforts. And again, just in terms of the rollout, you've got a plan for that in terms of the social media and other on the village website?
Correct.
Things like that, okay. So we get some bang for the buck in terms of creating some excitement, perhaps.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, Trustee LaBedz.
Just a quick comment. I like this whole thing. Thank you very much. I also like the fact that it's Arlington Heights. It's not like some of the logos of some of the villages and cities that you have to really stare at it and think, what is this trying to tell me? So I think that it was a long time coming and a lot of hard work, but I very much appreciate the work that's been done. And I guess I gave the last old flag to the county.
Yes, that's probably one of the last ones in our stock. So yeah, that'll be one of the things that we'll be doing if approved is kind of a flag ceremony, on the date that we kind of flip the switch. So yeah.
Well, that'll be fun. So thank you, and I'd be willing to make a motion when the time comes.
Any other comments? Trustee Bertucci?
Why do I still feel like I'm reluctant? We've been talking about how reluctant we were. We weren't, and many board members were not necessarily on board and happy with what we were getting from that marketing firm. And at some point in time, I also thought that we talked about, well, maybe this would be a compromise on a short-term basis until we see how the property at Arlington Park was going to get, and then at that point in time, maybe revisit this yet once again, but the whole, nothing about this still doesn't pop for me, but I don't know.
If I could, Trustee Bertucci, you know, what I was going to say is, you know, the idea behind this is the marketing campaign is going to be fluid and it's going to evolve over time. And certainly this isn't something we're saying the Ticket to the Heights campaign isn't intended to be a permanent presence forever. It's what we're going to be using for the next, you know, couple of years, few years to, you know, as the board desires to help promote our village. It's you know, an update. The organizational logo is an attempt to be a little bit more permanent in terms of our organizational brand. But no, I mean, as we know, it's difficult to get on stylistic things to get 9 people to agree, and it certainly wasn't unanimous, but this was the choice of the majority, and so, you know, that's where we've gravitated towards. But no, totally get it in that Take It to the Heights campaign is not intended to be a permanent fixture. It's would be our current campaign, nothing more.
Anybody else? All right, Trustee Grasse.
Brief comment. I thank you for the work. I really like the new, what do I want to say? I'm not a huge fan of the Taking It to the Heights, but I like the whole emblem, everything else that you've done. I think it fits perfectly in what, a little traditional, but updated colors. I like it all.
All right, anybody else? All right, who wants to, go ahead, Trustee LaBedz.
I move that the Board of Trustees recommend that village staff begin using the new village logo and implement the marketing campaign as presented.
Second.
Motion by Trustee LaBedz, second by Trustee Schwingbeck. Any further comments from the board or the audience? Saying none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, anything else from the village manager?
Very quickly, for the folks at home, I do want to encourage people to go on our website and look at the 2024 proposed budget. It features a 5th year of a flat property tax levy, so no increase in the village's portion of your property taxes. If you do have questions about the budget or comments, you can email them to budget@vah.com, and you will get a response prior to passage of the budget.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from the board under petitions and communications? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
By Trustee Baldino, second by Trustee LaBedz. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you all for joining us this evening.